Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. We are still working on some strange sort of tech issues that have been going on. Some gremlins have gotten in here, but things are improving. So we move forward. I'm going to welcome all of you. You're watching Truthseekers, and tonight we're going to go on a little bit of a journey, I think. Because many people talk to me about sort of their favorite historical cases about UFOs from conspiracy land. And I am sort of a student of the history of this thing and think it's important to recognize that history. Because once we recognize some of the history of these things, we start to see patterns, and things coming back again is a very common occurrence that I see very, very often. So I think history is very, very important. And I noticed somebody who has been a staple on UFO Twitter for quite some time, and his name is Jeff Knox. And every day I can look in my Twitter feed and see what happened today in UFO land, what historical thing happened on this day. He's a wealth of information, sort of a walking encyclopedia of so many different cases, and I found his knowledge of many different cases to be impressive. Also, Mr. Knox reminded me that it's perfectly okay and acceptable to have an interest in these things, to study these things, and still be very, very skeptical of some of these stories and the characters involved in the stories. Sort of reminded me that it's okay to be that way, because he tends to lean very skeptical towards many of the, let's just call them less than credible stories in the land of UFOs or conspiracy land. So we wanted to bring him here and make sure that we avail ourselves. I'm real big on that. If you find an undervalued resource, I learned this a long time ago. If you find an undervalued resource, take advantage of that. So I've wanted to bring him here for quite some time. He doesn't do very many interviews. I think this is only one of several that he's ever agreed to or done. So we're pleased and delighted to have him. Let's bring him in here. Mr. Jeff Knox, welcome.
Hey, glad to be here. Like I say, I haven't done very many, so be gentle with me. And I apologize in advance if my dog growls or barks.
Oh, no, it's okay. I told you I'm going to ride the mute button if I have to. You'll be fine. Your dog's fine. People are kind of used to, sometimes you hear like what sounds like elephants in my background. Those are just two children running around my house. It's fine. I'm going to start with what I ask everybody because I haven't heard your story on this yet. But what was it that got you started down this rabbit hole? Because you seem like you went pretty... Jeff went deep. He went to the bottom of this thing. What is it that got you started and got you stuck in this rabbit hole, Mr. Knox?
Well, I started pretty young. I think I was about 8 years old, and I believe I saw a documentary on television show. I couldn't tell you what it was right now, but that kind of got me going into reading books. And then the early 90s started and listened to Coast on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it was always kind of an interest of mine, along with various other topics I was interested in, science, physics, chemistry, etc. And I took a little break for it after a while, like during my college years. It was just something I did on the background. But for the last 15 years, I've been really deep into it again. I started just rereading a bunch of books and just going through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of UFO books and journals and articles and research. And for about the last 10 years, I've been doing it full time. I was fortunate enough to back then put some money into crypto, Bitcoin, and was able to use that to spend the last 10 years just researching this topic full time.
I can add you to the list of my friends I want to murder, because I have a few friends, and all of them told me, you gotta buy Bitcoin, Steven. I'm like, no, not gonna do it. Well, and most of them are rich now, so I was the stupid one, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm no longer rich. That money's all gone. You know, it's been wasted on UFOs, if waste is the right word to use. But yeah, I got a friend into it too, and he was able to retire, pay off his house, you know, buy some cars, some other things. So it's worked out for some of us. There's certainly a lot of grifters in the crypto community, though.
Oh,
So
sure.
you
But
got to be
you
careful.
literally made a bunch of money on crypto and whatever, and you said, you know what? I'm just going to quit my job and just do UFOs for now. Like
Yeah, pretty
you
much. I
you
mean,
really
I
took that
always
leap
worked
of
for myself.
faith.
I always work for myself because I got disabled as a teenager. I've
Oh, I'm
got a
sorry to hear
brain
that.
cyst, and my back's just totally screwed. So that's kind of why I'm laying down right now, if you can tell. But so I've always really just worked for myself because I haven't really, the whole 9 to 5 thing doesn't work with my migraines and when I'm sick all the time. And so I had some just businesses I did, and then put some of that money into crypto, and you know, then I just used it on UFOs, and it's collected quite a bit of UFO material with it. Been all over investigating, and
Yeah, I'm assuming from your vast, incredible store, you have everything, don't you? Like,
I have a lot. I mean, I have a lot personally that I've collected, but I've been fortunate to hook up with people like that's been called the UFO History Group. People like Mike Swords, Barry Greenwood, Jen Aldrich. These folks that are the true historians of this field that have been doing this since before I was even born. That through them I have access to even more. And so I try and share what I have access to, because not everybody has access to the kind of material that I've been able to obtain through these other dedicated researchers in the field. And so that's just what I've been doing. I just started doing these posts last fall because I kind of felt that everybody was obsessed with everything post 2017. Like that's all everyone wants to talk about. They want to like talk ad nauseum about gimbal for 5 years. Like what? So I thought people need to know that this topic goes back a long time and look at some of the more historical cases. So I just started putting this work out, and that's basically what I've been doing the last, I don't know, however many, several months it is. And I spend about 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week doing it. And hopefully people enjoy it and get some benefit from it.
well, I just want to let you know that I enjoy going to UFO Twitter because you're there. Like, you made it a more enjoyable thing to look at every day. So thank you. And also, we want to thank Roderick Stubblefield for becoming a YouTube channel member. And for those that don't know, if you become a member of our channel during live broadcast, we give you a shout out, a little thank you. Thank you, Roderick Stubblefield, for becoming a member. You got some new member benefits and a member badge. He's helping us to praise the cash, Mr. Knox.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
And I want to expand on what you just said, because I have a real problem, Mr. Knox, with people who do not know any of the history. I call them the 2016ers. It appears that New York Times article, while good for the subject, well, some people will argue that, but good for bringing people into interest. Yeah. But it was bad because there's just this huge influx of people interested in this topic, and all these people started podcasts and shows, and they have no idea about the history of this thing previous to 2016. And I think that's a real detriment, because they don't know, especially the grifting history. Like, if you've been here for 25 years and seen all the grifts come and go and these big hoaxes being built up, like the Roswell slides, or you've seen some of these personalities who got built up as being a scientist or a military guy, but then people look into their background and find out it's all fake and they were just selling a story. Mm-hmm. It seems like these 2016ers, they're at a disadvantage because they haven't been there for the history of the grifting side, right?
Exactly. And I like to refer to like the UFO topic kind of like a zombie land, because none of these hoaxes and grifts ever die. They just get rehashed and repeated and recycled like indefinitely.
Dr. Jonathan Reed is back now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would have thought things like the Aztec hoax, Silas Newton would have been dismissed a long time ago. You would have thought that people would have been done with secret soldier super nonsense BS a long time ago. You would have thought all this stuff, people have been hoaxing and pulling grifts on this topic for 75 years. And unless you know the history, you just fall for it all over again. there's not a day I don't go on UFO Twitter and I see somebody bringing up a case that is like a known hoax. Like it's bunk, it's nonsense. Like, and people keep falling for the same crap over and over and over again. And it's really sad because I try and point this stuff out and it gets me labeled as this negative, like a-hole, you know. In preparation for this show, I went and watched one you did with Erica Lukes a year or two ago. And she mentioned being on the B list. Well, I'm definitely on the C or the D list with, you know, most of UFO Twitter, just because I try and approach this more skeptically. I try and look at this topic, you know, more rationally than a lot of people. And I'm not afraid to point out what I think is bunk and the silly aspects of the topic. It's not because I don't think this topic is important or worthy of study or very interesting. I just want people to move on from the nonsense and to get into some of the better stuff that's out there. So.
Yeah, wow, you and I totally agree on that situation with the grifters, because, you know, like things like Dr. Jonathan Reed come back up, and I was floored that people were platforming him, and he was just telling his story, people calling him doctor, as if the entire story wasn't blown to shit in the 1990s. I was there,
and he's not a doctor.
I was there in the 1990s when the whole story got blown apart, and we've got big people, you know, with huge platforms like Jimmy Church and some other bottom-feeding grifters like Dr. J or whatever. They all started platforming him. Jimmy Church was going to do 2 parts on that, and then I just ripped that story to shreds one night, and he didn't do the second part because he, you know. But to the new generation, they don't know that that's a fake doctor. They don't know that his education is fake, his work history is fake. He made up the story with like a guy that worked at his local gas station for a witness, saying he was doing materials analysis on the biology of the alien and all. It's so stupid that but they do, Mr. Knox. Don't you think they come back over?
They do. I see. I thought Jonathan Reed was well debunked and done like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw him start to come up again about 10 years ago, and people were putting him on, you know, back then there wasn't nearly as many shows, you know, you had the radio shows, podcast UFO. Mine's like these days, there's so many podcasts, like you can't keep up with them. But they started, you know, he started to come back about 10 years ago as well. And now people are bringing him up again. When, if you want to know all about Jonathan Reed, you just need to go to UFO Watchdog.
Yeah, which is an ancient website. Even the guy who runs it says that website's ancient, haven't updated in 10 years, but it's still a tremendous resource.
It's brilliant. It debunks everything from, you know, the arts parts, Linda Moulton Howe nonsense to the Jonathan Reed story and just all these other like cons and grifters that have shown up in UFOs over the year. And you'd think we'd be done with all that, but no, it's still coming up regularly. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, I'm not going to share what he wrote. This is an aside for me and you, but there's a person named Jim in our live chat who made some statements. Email me any information you have on that, please, at truthseekershow@gmail.com. I would rather that you didn't make the kind of statements that you're making in the live chat unless we can establish proof or evidence of those claims. Those are pretty serious allegations that somebody was making. So, and Mr. Knox, this 2016 sort of resurgence, were you happy about that, or were you disappointed in the effects that had on this whole subject matter? Because you, like me, have been in this forever. And Knox, this guy and me have so much in common. He's an early Linux guy, and so am I. He's earlier than me. Yeah.
Well, you know, I was cautiously optimistic in 2016, you know, when rumors were starting to come out that, you know, there was going to be big news in the next year. But again, I've seen so much in this field that I didn't have a whole lot of hope, you know. Then they come out with the Nimitz video. I was a bit optimistic. Well, maybe we might actually have something here. And I spent, you know, a couple of years kind of really digging into it, you know, talking to people, you know, going to SCU, all this stuff. And, you know, the more in the 5 years or so, 5-6 years since then, it's just been, I feel nothing but disappointment. I'm glad people have an interest in this topic. I just think they're focusing their interest in the wrong places and it's become much more like a religion to a lot of these people. They're just waiting for this mythical disclosure that the government's going to tell them everything they want to know. And I don't think that's going to
Your dog
happen.
likes disclosure.
Apparently, you should see her growl when I mentioned Corbell.
So yeah, I think that most of that resurgence was a detriment because I don't know, maybe I'm prejudiced, but a lot of the people that I've seen come into this space and then instantly try to make money off of it, and they don't know the history, they're in denial, or it's convenient for them to deny the grifter side of the history of this thing, and just go all in believer. And I don't know, I don't like that myself.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that either. I think, and part of it is just how they approach the rest of the topic. Like, there's a great deal of disrespect and rudeness from this new crowd to people that have actually been investigating this for decades. When 2017 first came around, I heard all these people talking about, well, all the old ufologists are just jealous that they're not in the media right now. They're not big time celebrities, because it's like, UFO celebrities, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. The sad thing is that people that get famous in this topic are the people that promote the bunk. They're the grifters. They're the ones out there making money. They're the Corbells, the Knapps, the Linda Moulton Howes, the Corey Goods, David Wilcox. These are the guys that get famous and make a lot of money, where the best researchers in this field are completely unknown to most of the people that are interested in this topic.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
And
Some of
I
the
think
people,
that's absolutely
people ask me like, well, what about the credible researchers? And I can name some, but you got to really look for them. Like, and they're very obscure. They're just off in their interests, like you, Mr. Knox, doing your thing, and you're not.
These guys.
Oh, here, let me solo you. Go ahead, hold that up.
The Barry Greenwoods, the Mike Swords, the Jan Aldrichs, Robert Powell, Vincent Ballister. I think he's one of the best researchers that has been in this topic 50 years or more now.
Wow. And
these are guys that most people don't know about. They just know about what they see on Ancient Aliens or History Channel or people like Corbell's podcast and the more recent military witnesses that have made a career out of this topic, and they just completely ignore. And some of them not just ignore it, they say nothing's happened in 70 years. No progress has ever been made. No good research has been done until now. It's like, that's just false. That's just patently false and ridiculous. And it's silly. I mean, I don't understand why people personally just want to obsess about this recent stuff when there's so much to this topic, and this topic is interesting for so many different ways. And, we don't have to think the same things or agree, but we can still get along and discuss this topic. And unfortunately, the people that do take this topic seriously are either ignored or outright ridiculed or attacked by the new generation. I don't mind them being interested in silly stuff if they were respectful to the older people and the people that have been studying this longer as well. I mean, but they're not. They're rude.
And I agree with you. And I also think, like, a lot of people get angry with me, Mr. Knox. And I try to remind people that I have an intense interest in this subject that's been lifelong. I just don't want to waste time on nonsense. So if something is fake, I want to know about it as quickly as possible so I can put it in my black bin and never deal with it again and go on to my gray bin or my never investigated bin. It just
exactly.
Like, are you upset? People get upset from, how many people are mad at me for debunking Angeli's story, that Angeli lady? Like, did you want to just continue to believe her if her whole story was fake and waste a lot of time on her? Or did you want to know the truth and move on? Exactly. I want to know the truth and move on, and if you can get to it.
Yeah. I mean, I was called again a pseudo skeptic, a debunker. People tell me I'm too negative all the time, that I should just shut up and not share any personal thoughts on things and just do my history post. I'm not allowed to have opinions on what I consider bad behavior or grifters or.
Those are the posts I like the most. Don't stop that, right?
And ironically, those are the posts that get the most engagement. I can make an offhanded 5-second tweet about, say, Corbell, and get like 20,000 views and more retweets talking crap about me than all my history posts an entire month will get combined. And I don't even expect anyone to read those other tweets. But those are the ones that people seem to just get angry about. And, like you, I get a lot of grief about. But it's not because I'm saying this topic is just total nonsense. It's because, like you, I think we need to move past the stuff that is demonstrably nonsense so we can look at better stuff, or, open up time to look at new stuff that comes in. Instead, people just want to dig into the cases they obsess about and refuse to update their belief system. And that's not beneficial to this topic, and it's not going to help things progress forward. So,
Well, we agree on these things. And I wanted to get started with when we get into the history of this thing, there's just an incredibly long history, and more than modern times. Are you aware of, I'm sure you're aware of, like, Ezekiel's wheel and the Vimana stories and other stuff in ancient texts that may seem to indicate that this phenomenon has been with us as long as humans have been here on planet Earth, right?
yeah. I'll start by saying, I think, first of all, there's always going to be unidentified things in the sky. Since people have existed, have seen things they could not explain. The question is what that is. I will point out, I think it's almost kind of problematic to start attaching our modern views of UFOs and our beliefs and trying to reinterpret the past. Like, you see people go and look at, like, rock art and say, that's clearly an alien coming down in a space. Like, I'm sorry, that's freaking bullshit. If I can say that, that's nonsense. Like, and I don't think it's appropriate to try to reinterpret, say, indigenous people's beliefs and what they were doing under your modern belief system that UFOs are aliens. Like,
and thank you, My Flock is Everywhere, for helping us to praise the cash. We appreciate that.
Gotta get that money.
I think you're right. This reinterpretation, it's like this whole ancient alien theory that became hugely popular. You got to connect a lot of dots, and you have to fill in a lot of blanks to believe all of that. And I'm just not there. When I first read, I was young and I read Chariots of the Gods, and I was like a disgruntled Catholic kid that had too many questions, and the priests never wanted to answer my questions. And the reason that's so enticing is because it's like, well, this answers everything. Like, all my questions are answered. Like, God's not a spiritual being. He was a flesh and blood alien that came here and tinkered with our DNA. And it's very enticing to think that you have all the answers that you've always wanted now, too.
Well, that's kind of how conspiracy theory in general works. Like, conspiracy theories appeal to people because they provide answers. They provide a simplistic narrative for something that usually isn't simplistic. Like, it allows them to get a grasp on something, and it's comforting to them. It's a support system for them, and people enjoy that. But the problem is they take it to extremes, and they turn it into almost like this new religious system. And in fact, the new religious aspect of UFOs is one of the most probably academically studied aspects of this entire topic. I've got plenty of books all about UFO religions, like, on my shelves, and that's when it starts to get dangerous. But people have, there's always been things in the past. There's, back in the Roman days, they would talk about it typically in the forms of, like, military armaments and shields, flying spears, chariots in the skies. The historian Josephus in 65 AD, or Judea, talked about probably the most famous sky army case, where they saw these chariots and armies in the sky, like, going across. But the more you look at some of these past, like, past cases that people consider UFOs, they tend to be fairly similar to what people talk about now, but they're also easily explainable as things like bolides, auroras, sundogs, various astronomical or meteorological phenomena. And Ancient Aliens is something that really took up this idea that all these things that happened in the past are actually, space aliens visiting us. And that's kind of silly. I would recommend to people actually believe Ancient Alien stuff, which hopefully they don't. Instead of reading whatever Van Doniken's book was, Chariots of the Gods, go read Crash of the Chariots, I believe, by Clifford Wilson. Or
I have that book.
Go read Ronald Story's book, The Gods Are Revealed, or something like that.
And it sort of picks apart all of the talking points.
Or you can just go watch a great 3-something-hour documentary called Ancient Aliens Debunked, which is kind of put a lot of that stuff, to bed a long time ago. I'll tell you, my older brother used to be obsessed with the show Ancient Aliens, and he's got Asperger's, it's kind of OCD, and when he gets into something, he becomes super obsessed about it. Well, he used to have me put the shows onto him every time he would come over to visit my mother. It only took him one watch of Ancient Aliens Debunked to decide it was all nonsense. So he's one of the
you're right. That's a great
that can watch something like that and realize it's bunk. Some people, I get in with ancient aliens related topics on people online because I have a big interest in archaeology and anthropology as well. And some people can watch these debunkings and just come up with all sorts of new justifications as to why they're not good and
mental gymnastics.
Yeah. But there are at least a few people that you can show them the evidence that something's bunk and they can accept it and move on. And that's all I'm trying to do. Like, I'm not trying to be negative. And honestly, people act like I'm angry all the time. Like, I actually don't really get very emotional about this topic. I might get happy or laugh, but like, I don't really get pissed off or angry about this. And I honestly, personally don't understand why people do get so angry and mad in this topic. Like, they act like it's a personal insult to them to tell them that Bob Lazar is full of crap. Like, why? Why do you get mad about that? Like,
yeah, I've angered an awful lot of people, especially with some of the investigative stuff that we've done. It was like, well, if the guy's not a real scientist and he's a convicted pimp, I don't trust convicted pimps. I want to know that. Like, I don't. But I'll tell you what, Mr. Knox, I grew up with that story. I bought the VHS tape from the back of a science magazine. I think it was Popular Science.
Wait, you mean Bob Lazar made money on his story?
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah, oh no, he never made a dime. And I bought the tester's model, not once but twice, because I think my brother and I were horsing around and it fell off a shelf and broke, and it was irreparable. So I bought a second one. Like, I always wanted that story to be true. I saw something myself as a child, and when I heard about Bob Lazar, I was like, okay, well, what I saw was aliens. Then it's all true. It wasn't until years later when I started really digging in the story. They want you to just take the surface glimpse,
Oh yeah.
Not dig.
Most Bob Lazar people, they don't even know Bob's story or what he's claimed in the past. Like, they basically only know the simplistic narrative that like Corbell and Knapp has been telling them like over the years. Like, they don't actually even know the story of Bob Lazar's own claims. Like, you can come with them with stuff Bob Lazar himself has said, and they'll call you a liar. And it's like, really? Why don't you go read his own book or go listen to him in this thing? Like, it's like, you don't even know the own story you're trying to argue for, and you're coming at me, it's. And as you know, I spent a lot of time with Bob Lazar, a lot of time and a lot of money. I spent almost 2 years traveling around the U.S. investigating Lazar's story and his claims, and then I've seen an amount of money that I'll never get back. But it's, there's just people obsess over these silly things, and I don't think it's negative to point out that they're bunk. Like, I think it's important. I think people need to move on. When not only did 2017 bring in a bunch of people's topic, okay, so I was at the Corbell's Lazar film premiere in LA and met a lot of young people there, and they started to talk to me about like UFOs. Like, they didn't know how much research I'd done or how much of an interest I had in this topic. And they're like, man, did you hear what Corey Good said? Or do you hear about these secret space programs? Or did you watch the new Secure Team 10 video? Like, it was like, yeah, okay, so you bring in a lot of people, and Corbell's Lazar film did bring a lot of people into this topic as well as the 2017 stuff, but you're bringing in these people without critical thinking skills that are just accepting everything they hear as
and under false pretenses. You're selling them a fake story to get them involved.
Yeah, and the people that are selling the story, just how many times do they need to get caught selling fake stories? Like how many times does Third Phase or Secure Team or all these guys need to get caught hoaxing things like before you stop listening to them?
I'm amazed at that one, Mr. Knox. I put out these 2 documentaries, one of which I made and another one another researcher made. And, I knew it wasn't going to destroy their careers or anything, but, especially the people working for them, being their watchdogs, defending them, attacking people for saying that they hoax things, and at some point I kind of have said to myself, trying to argue with any of these people on the pro Third Phase of Moon side, it's like trying to argue with somebody who says water's not wet. Like, they have such a history of hoaxing things, faking things. And then they come out with these fake talking points like, we haven't hoaxed anything in 5 years. And then you catch them in the 5-year window. So then the defenders move the goalpost and say, well, they haven't hoaxed anything in 3 years for sure. And then we catch them in the 3-year window. Now we're up to 2021. So now they're up to the last 2 years. And we have that one case where we talked to the hoaxer. He sent him the video. He showed them how he made it. He's talking about it with Rich from GoofOn. And Rich from GoofOn confirms Third Face told him that video was fake and how it was faked. Thanks for letting me know you're the one who made the video. A couple days later, they post the video pretending it's a spaceship. But that they somehow think that's not a hoax. Like, all that's required is deception.
Yeah, I mean,
they knew it was fake. They were told it was fake. They used it anyway. That's a hoax. You hoaxed in 2021. So all the talking points fall apart. You haven't changed. You've changed. They stopped using CGI. That's another one of their talking points. Like, well, we don't accept things that are CGI, because they used to just everything was CGI. And that was a big criticism. So now they changed and won't use CGI, but they're using other hoaxing methods, other ways of faking a UFO. You're still a hoaxer. You don't get extra points for changing the method that you're using to hoax. It's ridiculous.
And see, that's the thing, is they're not all necessarily CGI or just complete fabrications. People are putting out stuff that they know are being misidentified, like it's a bird or it's a plane or it's a balloon, or stuff that they know is just not an anomalous UFO.
Yeah, but they're going to pretend, though.
They're behind the same excuse.
They're going to pretend that they don't know. They've been studying UFOs for 20 years, but they don't know what a rocket plume looks like. I'm not judging. Right?
I'm just putting it out there. I'm just putting it out there for people to decide for themselves. Like, I'm not saying it's a real UFO.
Yeah,
like, that's the same grift they've been pulling since the beginning. Like, you do know it's not a UFO. You're being dishonest and you're manipulating people. And you see the same thing on UFO Twitter all day. You've got these that just are post, and they're not even just new videos. They're recycling the same old bunk videos from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a long time ago, presenting them as they're brand new, putting like a recent date on it, saying this was just recorded. Like, check this out. Like, and then you got to have great people out there like UFOs of Interest.
I was just going to mention him. I love that guy, because people
that is on the ball, reminding people like
10 minutes after somebody posts a fake, he's like, no, this was from 1999 and this was a hoax and here's my story on it. He knows all of the fakes like the back of his hand. And what gets me is that there are some people on UFO Twitter that just keep posting fake videos. No matter how many times people keep busting, you would think that they would like back off a little bit and say, maybe I got to do some research before I post something so I don't get embarrassed by these people who know the hoaxes so well, or know the topic so well. They know the fakes. No, they just keep posting fake after fake after fake every day.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's just today, a certain pretty large UFO Twitter account with almost 40,000 viewers put out this new clearly fake CG video that they claimed was the original gimbal, unedited, or that it could be the original gimbal. What do you guys think? And that's problematic to me when you have such a large following and you're not putting any critical thought into the videos you're putting out there and presenting them as maybe potentially being real. But you see it every single day on Twitter. It's sad.
Yeah. And also, people don't realize the damage that you're doing when you put these fake things out, because it's not just for right now that there's fake disinformation being put out. UFO of Interest just did a story of another YouTube channel that's recycling all of the old Third Phase of Moon early videos that were all CGI, all fake, all made with models or Star Wars toys and a green screen. He somehow got a hold of all their early videos, and he keeps posting them as if they were, like you said, oh, this was filmed last week in Guatemala. No, it wasn't. Third Phase said it was filmed somewhere else. It was filmed in Hawaii. We can prove that. And this was a hoax, 12 years ago, and it's still a hoax. So these things have more damage. Like Third Phase of Moon has done more damage than just right now. Like, even if they did 100% stop faking things, which I don't believe they have, they still have that entire catalog of garbage that they put into the community that now people are taking and recycling and disinforming even more people with garbage, fake information. It's
people talk about, the stigma and trying to destigmatize this topic, and they like to put the blame on anybody that shows, some critical thinking skills or a slight bit of skepticism as being the ones causing the stigma. No, the stigma comes from within the community. It's the people that continuously post ridiculous CGI hoax and other fake videos. The people that continue to put out these ridiculously absurd stories and silly nonsense. That is what causes the stigma. And you can keep changing the acronym you want to use, UFO, UAO, UAP. You can change what UAP means, like to reduce the stigma. That's not going to have any effect until you change the way the community acts and they stop putting out all the silly nonsense that causes some stigma in the first place. And
I agree with you 100%.
It's harmful and it's damaging. And
it's like everybody attacking Mick West. Like, hey, dude,
Mick West is great.
Yeah, he's awesome. Don't complain about Mick West. Get better evidence. Stop complaining and get better evidence. Don't you want to know it's fake? Oh, Mick West. Oh,
he's doing honestly what any UFO investigator should do. Any MUFON field investigator should be doing the exact same stuff.
Well, they all skip his step. They all skip that first step, which is trying to identify if it's actually anything extraordinary or not. They skip that step and they go right to it. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens, They
start with this assumption and then they label you as being biased or closed-minded or afraid of the truth, like because you don't automatically assume that maybe it is aliens or, some sensational like outcome. Like that's not, you shouldn't be starting off with that kind of belief. Like it's up to you to prove that that's the case. You're not being biased by, not starting off with the assumption that maybe it is aliens. Like your first step should be trying to look for prosaic explanations to explain a case. That's what
I mean. If I see something, I have this cabin in the wilderness, and it's very, very high up in the mountains, and there's no light pollution. So therefore, we see a lot of strange things in the sky. But I have to have a satellite tracking app. I have to have a telescope. I have to have a stellarium to identify if it's a planetary body or a star or meteors or whatever it could be, comets. You have to eliminate all of the prosaic or ordinary explanations first before I get even a little bit excited up there. And it's easy to get excited when you see some of the stuff, and maybe it's the atmosphere or the high altitude, but some stuff seems really not ordinary when you first look at it.
Absolutely. And in the last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time on the road, and I usually like to drive at night. Like I'm just a night person. You guys have probably noticed that from when I tweet.
Me too.
And so I've spent tens of thousands of hours not just watching the sky when I drive, but just out in the middle of the desert watching the sky. And I've seen a lot of things that look strange. To this day, I still occasionally see things that look strange to me. I mean, I just did a tweet a few weeks ago back when the whole Jupiter Venus thing was going on. I was driving home to the grocery store and saw some of the sky that even though I knew it was, Jupiter or Venus, it just looked so strange. It looked like beams are being shot down to the ground, and even though I knew it was a planet, I still busted out the star checking app on my phone, checked it all out.
Well, that recent Jupiter thing was a perfect example because all day on Twitter, all that night, people were posting hovering UFOs, hovering motherships, and
from all over the world.
And poor Mick West kept like tweeting like just a point to his tweet saying like this is Jupiter and Mars, like. It's going to be all over. It's going to be, don't mistake this.
I took a visual picture with my phone, and at the exact same time took a screenshot of the star checking app, so that these are the exact same things. And the more time you spend watching the night sky, the better you can get at identifying very strange things. But even after many years, I still occasionally see things that.
No, you're right. I now have my
time to investigate them. For example, when you're driving out on like ET Highway down in Nevada, you'll see these strange, almost like jumping looking lights. And you think like, oh, that's kind of like what Bob Lazar describes, right? But the problem is at nighttime, you can't actually see the mountains. And those lights are actually ranch lights on these poles, next to a ranch house.
Yeah,
And
and
if
you're
you just go
moving is
by, you would just
yeah.
think, well, that's crazy. But what I'll do is I'll take out my Sony camera is really good with low light. If I see something that looks strange, I'll take a nice low light picture of it, and then you can see the mountains. See, it's actually on the ground. You just can't see those mountains because it's pitch black at night. And there's just all these things that'll look strange if you don't put in the time. There's one time I was driving around somewhere else in the desert that I thought this light was following me through this field. Like it was a parallax kind of like illusion, right? Like kind of like when you look at planes, it looked like this thing was just following me around. So I spent like 2 hours like driving around like these ranch properties, only to realize it was just like this glitchy light that they had that just kept like going on and off and just like doing strange things. And so I don't begrudge people for misidentifying things in the sky. It's just that when you should look to see if you can find an explanation for it before assuming it's alien or something truly anomalous. And I have yet to see anything in the sky that I couldn't eventually come up with an explanation for. I'm open to there being things in the sky, but I'm the kind of guy that needs proof. Like I want proof, and I think proof should be what everyone wants. Like, and so when you get mad at people because they're demanding proof or they have a bit of a higher standard of evidence, I think that's silly. We need these people that are looking for prosaic explanations, and they shouldn't be getting the grief they do. I mean, you can't hop on a Mick West post without seeing dozens of people like trolling him, like with nonsense. And then they get mad at you and say you're trolling when you point out something is a star on one of their posts. Or it's like, come on, guys, we got to do better in this topic. Like,
no, I absolutely 100% agree with you. And I think you're also right about the longer you do it, because when I first bought that land up there on that mountain, I was fooled really good by just satellites for a long time. And then I learned to kind of identify what that looks like. It looks like a slow star moving across the sky slowly. Eventually
yeah.
you start figuring it out and go, oh, okay, that's just a satellite. And I sort of agree with Stanton Friedman. Like, I don't care about balloons. I don't care about drones. I don't care about
Flying
stars in the
saucers.
sky. I want to see the flying saucers. So I don't care about any ordinary. I don't care about airplanes in the sky. I don't care about those. A lot of it's so funny how many fake videos are actually those divers with the fireworks on their feet.
Yeah, or other lights. Yeah,
stunt divers or other lights. Yeah, like I don't care about any of that stuff, or Chinese lanterns, or any of that stuff. I do not care about. I care about the ones that cannot be explained, the extraordinary ones. So yeah,
and I've been out with people that have been claiming to see a UFO, and like it's clearly a satellite. I've been to UFO skywatching parties at various UFO conferences. Like Ben Hansen would do one at the International UFO Congress, where they bust out the night vision goggles, which, to be honest, I've always found night vision goggles for UFO hunting a bit grifty. Like, it's going to help you see things like planes and other objects that you couldn't see with the naked eye because they're so far away. And then people are going to interpret those things as UFOs because they couldn't see it with their naked eye. Like, that's just, it's kind of like the equivalent of ghost hunters going out using all their equipment and seeing things that they want to see. But
yeah, I agree with you on that, because once there's a guy named Ron from Cosmic Neighbors and this Anthony from Unidentified S4, and they have all those special cameras and light amplifying cameras and night vision, and yeah, we saw some stuff, but most of it was planes off in the distance that you could not see with the naked eye.
Yeah.
But that thing amplifies it. That amplifies the lights on the plane so that it looks like something extraordinary or something mysterious.
Or flying pyramids, from those stars. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've said at those conferences where the whole crowd is like, "That's a UFO. Do you guys see it? It's a UFO," and they have it all up on a big video, and everybody thinks, and it's like, it's not a UFO. I'm sorry, like that's a plane. Like, here, look, you can see it in flight radar. Like, and if you've ever been to the UFO Congress, like that's down in Arizona, that's right on like it's like a major flight path for the Phoenix airport, and it was just planes, nonstop planes, and people will believe it's UFOs. it's easy to convince groups of people that they're having a sighting. I mean, Kreskin had his fake mass UFO sightings back in the day. There was the one that really pissed off Art Bell, because he held his little fake mass UFO sighting. Like, you get groups of people looking for UFOs with, UFOs on the brain. Like, they're going to find UFOs. They're just not going to be true UFOs. They're going to be misidentifications. And yeah, anyway.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. So somebody asked in the live chat, but before we get to that, I do want to get to some more important points of UFO history.
Sure.
And the one that I just always went back to and have spent a great deal of time. I interviewed every expert, author, researcher. Well, not every, because I didn't get to you and many of the others that I would have liked to, but on Roswell. I got to know what you think and what is your best explanation for what actually happened there, because it seems like Roswell is such an appealing case because of the volume of information there is. And that's both good and bad, right?
Yeah. So, okay, with Roswell, again, like you say, it's probably the most talked about case. The most stuff's been written about it. And, people talk about the hundreds of witnesses, but the problem with it is, like, they're third party people, like a friend of a family showed me a piece of the material, or, very few actual witnesses. I tend to think there's just a normal explanation for Roswell. Personally, like, people say, oh, it couldn't have been a Mughal balloon. I don't think that's true. I think it definitely could have been a Mughal balloon. And I don't even agree with people in the history. Like, Don Schmidt is in the history group. I like Don. Like, he once offered to have the UFO Museum in Roswell hire me to basically do their library, their research library. Like, he's a great guy, but I'm not going to talk to him about Roswell because he's a true believer about Roswell, and I'm just,
I'll give you that. Yeah,
I'm not, like, and the more,
and you're right. There's a lot of like when you get to, well, we ran out of witnesses, so now we're going to do a book on the children of the witnesses of Roswell. But I still found that book kind of compelling because there was some deathbed confessions that people told their son or daughter. It is very interesting, yeah.
It's just like, the more you dig into basically not just Roswell, but any case, like, and start to go look at what do we really know? What was the source material that a lot of these stories are coming from? You start to realize that a lot of things have been changed over the years. There really isn't, strong evidence, to point towards, a case being anomalous. It's a lot of the modern narratives surrounding a lot of famous cases just don't even factually match the original information for the case. Like, it's just been changed, over the course of time. And Roswell is one of those cases at this point that it's so long ago. I don't think anything's going to ever come from it. It's, what else can you do with it? Everyone's dead. It's, we've seen the documents available. There's people,
and there have been multiple digs at the crash sites too.
Oh, there's another one coming up, I think, this summer.
They do every couple of years. Somebody starts getting shovels out and let's dig for the.
Yeah,
we'll find the proof of the aliens somehow.
The big one that Bill Dolman did back with the Sci-Fi Channel. Back in 2000, what was that, 2 or something like that, and there's other people that have gone out there. I've actually spent, I've been out on the debris field, walked it myself several times. I've actually probably spent a few weeks camping out there as well over the years, and I never found anything. And all the samples people bring up and present, these like little pieces of metal, like all alleged UFO debris, turn out to be just normal kind of metals we have on
ordinary
Earth.
Earthly metals. Yeah. And when you got to remember, when you're on a ranch, there's going to be some metal material that falls out of some machinery or something. I saw somebody.
I found an old tin can that was probably like 100 years old.
Somebody sent me a picture of something that they found. They apparently at the Roswell crash site, and it turned out to be a bolt. It was an old rusty bolt, and that's all it was. So sometimes the excitement is not warranted for these things. I think that you might be right, and I guess there was a time where I thought or was hopeful that Roswell would be the holy grail, and we'd get the smoking gun evidence or proof, at least of alien visitation of Earth. Some kind of smoking gun evidence or proof, but it just never comes. It's always kick the can, and
you have like, and you, to this day, you know, you've got all these disclosure people convinced the government's going to eventually disclose, and what that means is going to tell us all about like the Roswell and the crash saucers they've got, and like, well, that would be awesome. I mean, I would love it that was true, but I don't see any evidence for that. And like with Roswell, again, you have a lot of people like just kind of profiting off it and making crazy claims, like Philip Corso and his absolutely ridiculous book, The Day After Roswell. Like, there's just so much time and confusion that I don't think there's any hope that anything will ever come from the Roswell story, personally.
All right. Somebody asked in the live chat, and I get asked this a lot, so I'm curious what yours are. What are the cases that you do find the most mysterious or unexplainable or plausible for alien visitation?
You know, I get asked this a lot. Like, they want to give me like, what are my top cases? What are like my favorite cases? Like, to be honest, I don't really believe in best cases or that there are top cases. Like, there's a lot of really interesting and compelling cases that, you know, are strange. I don't think they provide any evidence whatsoever that they're alien or from outside this world. I mean, there's a lot of really good, well-documented stuff, like the October 68 Minot, you know, Air Force Base sighting, that not to be confused with Robert Salas's ridiculous story, or any of those other folks. But, that is probably one of the better documented cases that has the most primary source material, interviews with the people there, done by some really great people like Tom Tullian and John Aldrich. And you can go to, I believe it's Minot, AFB 5050 B52 UFO, Minot B52 UFO.com, and look at all that material. And again, it's an old case, and people they're talking about how things repeat in history and how none of this stuff is new. That case it's got radar scopes. It's got more information for it than we have for things like Nimitz, you know, or Gimbal. Like those cases, while they sound great, the only real evidence we have is an ambiguous video and some witness
grainy video and some witness testimony.
And that's not new. Like, there's been, for example, gun camera footage. I posted gun camera footage of a case just this month, in fact, of something that was recorded that was in the Blue Book files. You know, this Minot, you know, case in October 68. It's got radar scope images that they took of the radar screens. There's interviews with like all the people involved. Like, there's a lot more primary source material for that than there is for a lot of modern day cases. Do I think it proves anything anomalous? No. And it actually sounds very similar to a case 2 years earlier. Do you know who David Schindel is?
Rings a bell, but not off the top of my head. No.
So, like, Robert Salas recently posted a couple of days ago how not only did 10 nukes go off, they now know about 3 separate times that happened, right? David Schindel is one of the people that said that happened, you know, the fall before the whole Echo flight shut down, and then Robert Salas's alleged shutdown. And if you go back and look at the case files for that time period, back in August of 1966, there was another incident at Minot Air Force Base, which I think may be the one that David Schindel's talking about, where they saw a UFO. Sorry. Dorothy, where they saw a UFO in the sky. Wow.
That's okay. Hold on here. Let me mute.
Anyway.
I mute button, not yours. Sorry. That's okay. Here, I'll unmute.
Okay, so anyways, all these base personnel at Minot saw this thing in the sky for 3 hours, and they experienced radio interference on the radios trying to communicate with launch control facilities. And if you look at other cases from this, and one thing I've noticed studying cases, going over them chronologically by like date and time period, you start to see a lot of similar cases over the years happening on the same time of year, the same time of night, for the same durations with very similar descriptions. And you see this with that Minot case is very similar to the one that happened 2 years later. It's very similar to what people like Salas described for their case. And it's actually also very similar to the last 2 days is when the famous swamp gas case happened.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That always seems to be a ridiculous explanation to me, but
and it is, but you also have to understand
stranger things have happened in nature, I suppose. I
one
once
of the
saw
reasons
ball lightning, and that was amazing. That looked like paranormal to me. It looked like something out of this world. Ball lightning is amazing. If you get a chance to see some.
Yeah, I haven't seen ball lightning, but I've seen what would be described as green fireballs twice. That was just really crazy. I thought it was amazing as well. But it's God, I lost track of time. Okay. One of the reasons why Hynek initially didn't think much of that case was because he was actually out there investigating, and he was like with people that would point to something. There it is. There's the UFO again. Only he immediately knew that was actually just like Venus, like that was a star, like that people were interpreting as UFO. And so that initially kind of put him off, that there wasn't anything going on here but misidentifications. People probably know the whole story about the whole swamp gas explanation. I won't really get into that. I did 2 tweets about it the last 2 days. But the way people describe those Dexter, Michigan, Hillsdale, Michigan sightings, where they saw a bright kind of light, they said it would kind of come down to the ground and then it would kind of go back up again. That's identical to how people at Minos Air Force Base, like both those years, and a few other sightings described what they were seeing. Only the problem is, like, that's what Hynek said was a star. Like, and the fact that something stayed for 3 hours and they witnessed this, like, that to me doesn't really sound like a UFO. That sounds like a misidentification of something astronomical. Kind of like these people you see saying that they see the same UFOs in the sky every single night, like they're following them around. It's like, I'm sorry, if you're seeing the same thing repeatedly, like on a regular basis, you're not seeing a UFO. You're misidentifying something that's prosaic. And
sure,
that's Sorry.
What do you think of the Cash-Landrum case? That's always been one that seemed a little mysterious to me. But I sure went down a bunch of rabbit holes with that one, and even went to extreme, I don't know. A lot of times I will just say, well, this person's not credible, or this person's not credible. In that case, I listened to what everyone had to say about the case. It seems very mysterious, and they have some physical effects that appear to be radiation poisoning from their exposure to that craft. Most of me thinks experimental aircraft, especially with the Chinook helicopters that were witnessed in the area, but the military denies they had Chinook helicopters in the area at that time, and the closest were hundreds of miles away. So that's a real rabbit hole, that one.
Yeah, the real expert, I think, on that case these days is probably the great Kurt Collins. But there's always this residual of cases that are just like truly strange, and it's hard to kind of bucket into a prosaic explanation. Is kind of, and to me that's kind of where like a lot of alleged abductions are as well. It's like either these people are just delusional, they're lying, or there's something kind of super strange going on. Cash-Landrum's kind of like one of those cases where there's, again, it's a story where things have changed over the years. Like if you look at the original material, it's not quite the same as it is now, but it's a very strange one. And as you said, they've looked into all sorts of explanations. Is it a nuclear powered craft? Is that why they had radiation burns? I don't know what it is. Like it's a strange one. Or is it a case where these people actually burned themselves with an iron and called it a radiation burn? I don't know. There's strange ones out there, and those ones go in my gray bucket, because they're interesting. But again, I don't think there's much evidence that really would be considered proof that there's something from out of this world or otherwise.
Yeah, I think you might be right. So with this TTSA in 2017, sort of these the gimbal, the go fast, I didn't understand the excitement, and I'm assuming that I'm not alone in that, because I kind of looked at that and went, well, this is very grainy footage, and it's hard to really make any determination. And can we get the radar tapes from the ship? And we never do. Can we get any of the sensor data from the ship? Can we interview people from the ship? And and then there's these back and forth statements of, some of the witnesses, including the female one whose name always escapes me, and Dietrich. Yeah, we've got two people that said, well, I thought it might be a missile when I first saw it. Well, if you're in an active area and then there's a drone test facility like not too far away from where these sightings on the West Coast were.
Yep.
Do you think the excitement over those things was warranted? And I guess hasn't Mick West sort of blown apart that they were anything extraordinary in two of the three cases?
I think he has. I like Steve just mentioned the chat. I was kind of initially pumped for some of these videos, like when Nimitz came out. I thought, well, we might actually get some good evidence this time. Some hard evidence that something really is going on. But the more you dig into it, and the more I dug into it, the more you realize it's not too different than any other case that we've had. We've got a grainy video. That's the only actual physical or hard evidence that we have. And then we got some witness testimony. And so it's really not any different than any, other case we've had throughout history. And I don't think anything will ever be proven from the videos. They just won't. Like, even if you want to believe what's behind the video, like what's in the video is something anomalous or a true UAP, the video doesn't show that. None of the videos actually show anything anomalous. Like the Fleur video does not show anything anomalous. You can think it's a UAP, but it's not. We don't see any extreme maneuverability, any speed. We don't see any of that. Same thing with the gimbal. You can believe that's a UAP, but the video isn't going to prove that. And you have people that are just, doing what they consider science and math and drawing these plots, of how they think the video is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, that's just, you're speculating. You're adding your own stuff on top of it that isn't actually there.
Yeah, just a note, somebody is in the live chat, Brooke came in. Thank you. The gold color is letting us know that the Rumble live stream is locked up, and I just checked and it appears to be. So I apologize, but I'll put a notice in the Rumble live chat with the link to the YouTube live chat. Sorry about that, Rumble viewers. That's the first time that's happened, so I don't know what's going on. We're a live show. We roll with the punches. Maybe it's the Men in Black, Mr. Knox. They don't like you ruining their alien narratives. I also thought that people made some extraordinary claims about the objects seen in those videos. And we constantly get these statements like, these things defied the laws of physics, or these things moved at speeds. We don't have anything that can move that fast.
Yeah.
Or I even heard somebody one time argue with me saying, well, these things did 90-degree turns and we don't have anything that can do 90-degree turns. And I'm like, I can go to Walmart for $40 and buy a drone that can do 90-degree turns. So, of course, the military's got something that can do 90-degree turns. It seemed like the arguments, first of all, some of them were just flawed from a research perspective. And secondly, if you're going to make claims like these things defied the laws of physics, then I need to see the sensor data that you're basing that observation on. Not trust me, dude. Right? Or am I wrong?
No, I agree. And this is something that kind of disappointed me when I started to look into these cases like Nimitz. And, I talked to a guy that, was an Fleur pod expert, used the same pod. He's actually the same guy SCU used for their report on the Nimitz case. I talked to him for a good deal of time, and then I traveled to SCU, the very first one in 2019, watched all these presentations. Some of you guys have probably seen that report in that Fringe Journal Entropy by Newth and Rayleigh and Powell, about estimating the characteristics of, unidentified objects. And they do all sorts of great fancy physics and math and come up with all these figures of the G forces that would be required, the speeds moving. But if you actually look at what they're basing that on, it's not on sensor data. It's not on evidence. It's on stories. It's on, for example, like with the Nimitz, all those speeds and stuff come from stories Kevin Day told, of what he alleged he saw on the screen 15 plus years earlier. It's not actually based on hard evidence, but people look at these papers and, wow, these guys are really smart dudes. And they're brilliant guys. Like I met them all. They're very intelligent people, but the math and the physics they're doing to come up with these alleged characteristics that we're witnessing in these videos isn't based on really the videos as much as it's based on stories that were being told. And with like Nimitz, for example, a lot of the speeds are come down to, they say, for example, it disappeared and then it showed up at the cap point. Well, okay, how do you know it showed up at the cap point? Did you track it from point A to point B, or did something just disappear at A? Something new showed up at B. You assumed it was the same object going at a
Yeah, that I remember this argument, and I thought it could be two drones. One disappeared over the horizon, and one arrived at the other point, and you're mistaking it for the same object. Yeah.
Yeah, or it could be a sensor glitch or anomaly. Like, you have to remember, both with Nimitz and Gimbal, like, they were in the process of rolling out and upgrading to a brand new system, and we're in the process of recalibrating these systems.
Yeah, and I know,
ironically, once that was done, all the UFOs stopped appearing on the radar. Like,
yeah, and I've talked to some military people, Navy people, who told me that when you recalibrate all the sensors on a ship, everything's a little wonky for a while because you may have turned some dials too far up and you may have turned some dials too far down. After calibration is kind of a dangerous time. You have to do some more testing to find out if you were correct in your recalibration of all these very sensitive electronic sensors, you know. And if you don't do it right, you're going to get too many hits or not enough hits, you know.
Yeah. And then and the other issue with these specific incidences is the only people that we really have that have come forward and that are talking about this are the same people that have kind of embraced the UFO topic and like the narrative. Like, for example, the hundreds of sightings on the daily basis for years that Ryan Graves talks about. Well, where are any of these other pilots? Like, how come we can't get a single person besides for these handful of people talking about these incidences?
It's like they were put out, and one of them was on a TV show before this. So I don't trust. Was it Fravor? I don't trust him because he seems like a spotlight hound. To me,
I met Fravor and ate breakfast with Fravor, and he's a funny guy, but even he was skeptical of people like Kevin Day. The irony is, at that time he was like, I'm skeptical of anyone who wants to spotlight and who wants to go to these UFO conferences and who wants to. Meanwhile, it's his first UFO conference he's going to, and he's since pretty much embraced the topic and done podcasts and everything else.
Yeah, and meanwhile he's all chips in when he realized that this was a good money source for him and a good source of fame and whatever,
And as you pointed out, even people like Dietrich and Slate thought it was a missile until these UFO people started telling them, no, it's not a missile, it's a UFO. Like a lot of these people didn't even think it was anomalous. And if it was so anomalous to them, or they thought it was so earth-shaking evidence, why did they forget about it for 15 years? And why do most of the people involved still not care or want to talk about it? It just showed to me once again that most stories ultimately come down to stories, not actual evidence.
Yeah, anecdotes. We've talked about this. Those anecdotes.
And people say the plurality of anecdotes is evidence. No, sorry. The plurality of anecdotes is a lot of stories. It's I just want better evidence. I just want this topic more serious, and if there is evidence, I want to see it. I don't want to see another grainy video or with a lot of stories attached to it being told by people that are full in on profiting from this topic. That's just, I don't think that makes me negative to find that all a bit incredulous. I don't know.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's good to have that caution and not just blindly accept the stories, because, if we just blindly accept the story hucksters, then Bob Lazar's real. He's not a pimp. He's a government scientist and a whistleblower. It just, I see though that there's such a need for this information and people want it to be true so desperately. And that's why I think the grifters rush in to fill the need, because the actual good or verifiable evidence and information is so minuscule that it can't possibly fill the demand. So the grifters rush in to fill that demand, right?
Yeah, and I'll point out that not everyone isn't necessarily being a grifter. Something I've noticed with both like SCU and NARCAP. I think a lot of these people do have a sincere interest in the topic, and they're very intelligent people, but they're also believers. And so they're using their knowledge about math, physics, science, and their degrees in the cause of following their true belief. I'll point out, there was a video I posted 2 days ago. It was a case of a pilot sighting in March, I think 2020. And the pilot described an object being about 1,000 feet away outside of the plane, following them, going at a high rate of speed, just as fast as the plane. Well, you look at the actual video and it's pretty clear it's probably Venus. It's like a bright planet. It's nowhere near the actual plane. The witness testimony does not match with the video they recorded the entire time. And you actually go read the NARCAP report on that, and you think that maybe they would try and explain it away as Venus. The problem, though, is the report, and I love NARCAP. I think they're one of the more serious organizations, but they took everything the pilot said as an absolute fact and worked from there. Like, they didn't ever try to identify it as an astronomical body, even though that's what it probably almost certainly is. They assumed everything the pilot said about how fast it was going, that it was right near them, was true, and then came up with the conclusions based on that. And I found a lot of the people that do try and approach this topic more scientifically, but are still true believers, are doing the same thing. They're trying to use science and their degrees to promote a belief-based narrative based on shoddy evidence. And then you would just end up getting people doing what they do, appealing to people's degrees. But Travis Taylor has PhDs, so you don't know anything, and he does. Like, I'm sorry, like, Travis Taylor may be a smart guy, but he's also a true believer. A lot of these people are true believers, and the fact that they have degrees doesn't change the fact that their analysis was just bad. And you don't have you don't have to have a PhD to see that it's bad. I mean,
amen. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people, the right way to investigate is to look at all of the evidence and draw the best conclusion that you can based on all available evidence. But it does seem like some people have already made their conclusion, and then they try to cherry pick available evidence, to get to the alien explanation or the mystery explanation, even. It's unfortunate, but you're right. And then we've got these true believers like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, that are science guys. Great, you're a science guy, but you're also a wackadoo. You're like Puthoff, a high-level Scientologist. If this guy believes in Xanadu or whatever in Scientology, then I don't really trust his scientific analysis of anything.
And I actually knew and followed Eric Davis before I knew he was into UFOs. Like, I used to do a lot of studying of basically speculative propulsion methods and whatnot. And for example, he edited a book with Mark Millis, who ran the Breakthrough Propulsion Project at NASA, looking at all these different, speculative ways to, like, for anti-gravity and other faster than light travel. And so I actually followed all that stuff. And I have no doubt the guy's a smart dude, but he's also kind of a real true believer in this topic. A lot of these guys are smart. They just kind of, move out of their lane. Like, I'm sure, like, Gary Nolan's a very smart guy in his field, but they try and, like,
he's an immunologist, so I don't think he's qualified to do materials science, but he's going to bring, he's going to do materials analysis or even DNA analysis. I mean, he did that Atacama thing with a bunch of other people, granted, but if you're an immunologist, I think you should stay in your lane and not start talking about, possibly alien materials that people are sending you. It'd be like me commenting on something that's totally outside of my field, my background is computer science. Yeah, I'm not going to really comment on, like, radar systems because I'm not an expert in those things, even though they might be computer controlled or computer enhanced or computer, whatever. I don't know radar systems, so I'm not qualified in that area.
It's problematic when these guys come out acting like UFO experts, because you just get a lot of people appealing to their authority, appealing to their degrees. And, these guys got PhDs, so obviously they know better than any of the rest of us about this. And it's like, that's not the case. Like, and there's no reason to believe that. As you pointed out, like, Nolan got involved with this topic back with Greer and the Atacama alien nonsense. Like, these guys may be intelligent guys with, you know, advanced degrees, but they're also being driven by belief. And if you actually study things like a kind of a, to some people, UFOs are their hobby. Like, UFOs are more my career. My hobby is like social psychology and studying like misinformation, disinformation, fake news, belief systems, stuff like that.
Well,
And
those two go together very well, though.
they do. They go together. They go together great, actually. And one of the things like you actually learn if you look at the academic literature is some of the easiest people to fool and trick are the people with advanced degrees, intelligent people, because what ends up happening is they overestimate, they have overconfidence in their own ability to detect like bunk and nonsense, and that they basically end up getting fooled. They end up tricking themselves like into believing things. And so having advanced degrees doesn't make you immune from, you know, being susceptible to junk and nonsense. And it actually, those people are some of the people most susceptible to it. And you saw that, you know, we saw that a lot, you know, in just the political realm in the last 8 or 9 years. You know, you got a lot of really smart people with advanced degrees just believing like a lot of misinformation and bunk. You know, how many people you have, I guess I won't go into that. Don't want to get your video censored from YouTube or anything, but yeah, I mean, being smart doesn't make you immune to nonsense. Like,
no, you're right. And some people just have a belief system. At some point, they get convinced. And I'm pretty sure at one point, I was kind of convinced that there had to be some sort of other intelligence. And I have been using this term more frequently, the NHI, the non-human intelligence. I mean,
Yeah.
if we do look in ancient texts and everything, there's always been some form of non-human intelligence interacting with humans, whether we called it an alien. Now we're calling it aliens, and it's from another star system. Before it was from heaven or hell or the fairy world or any of that kind of stuff. Different human intelligence, non-human intelligence. You know, I would think that there probably has to be in the vastness of the universe, but somewhere along the lines, some of these people seem to get absolutely convinced, and then they cherry pick the data to fit their pre-drawn conclusion, and that's a dangerous place to be.
Well, what you hear from a lot of people is that they've had an experience of some kind, and that basically convinced them that everything else has to be true, because they've had an experience or they've seen. You know, I've heard people say, like, I've seen something that looks just like a sports model, so Bob Lazar's story has to be fact. Like, just because you've had your own experience does not add any more credibility to any previous cases. Like, but I do believe that there's probably, and I think it's almost certainty that there's intelligent life out in the universe and elsewhere. Is it visiting us? I don't know. For the longest time, when I first, you know, was younger, I was firmly on the side of the ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I mean, and I think if a lot of people being honest, like they want it to be aliens, like they don't want it to be, you know, some, you know, ambiguous thing. They want UFOs and UAPs to be aliens. And I never had a problem with the word alien or extraterrestrial. In fact, I thought it was kind of funny when I actually got on Twitter last summer that people would get mad at you for saying alien or ET. They acted like you were stigmatizing the topic by alien or
no,
ET.
That Anjali lady said that was a racist term. To call them alien is a racist term somehow. So that,
well, it's like alien, it really just, it's the other, it's something other than you. Like it, you know, alien is pretty all encompassing. Like the word alien existed long before extraterrestrials. It existed long before illegal aliens. You know, I've got a book that's not about aliens as people now consider them at all, called Romans and Aliens. It's all about the others and these other groups of people and how they interacted with the Romans back in the day. But so yeah, like I said, I got on the topic and people started saying, "No, you can't say alien. That's bad. ET, that's bad. That's stigmatizing." But the problem is, what are the alternatives? Like, if it's going to be anything, I think ET is more scientifically valid than, say, crypto-terrestrial, interdimensional,
interdimensional,
alien,
all of that
all these
stuff.
other things. Because at least with extraterrestrial, we have we don't know how it's being done, but we have theoretical ideas of how things like fast and light travel could occur within the realm of physics that we understand. Like that's at least possible, if far-fetched. Like we don't even know how you rip holes into different dimensions and travel that way, or any of these other topics that people think is less stigmatizing are actually the more kind of crazy out there like ideas and hypotheses that you could have for this topic. It's just like I say, I was fine with Stan Freeman flying saucers. We want the flying saucers. We don't care about the other stuff. Like that's kind of where I am with things.
That was kind of my. I sort of adopted that myself, and if it is some ordinary earthly object, I want to identify it as quickly as possible and move on to the next situation, because I don't care about any of those things. I just don't,
And I was the big nuts and bolts guy for a very long time, and if what UFOs ultimately turn out to be, as if they're actually just one thing, like the UFOs basically encompasses all sorts of things from astronomical phenomena, meteorological stuff, planes, stars, bolides, psychological aberrations, visual and cognitive distortions and illusions that people experience. Like there's all sorts of things that can explain UFOs. And as I studied more and more of this topic and kind of got more into things like social psychology, I started to kind of realize I don't really need to have an ultimate belief as to what I think UFOs are or what I hope them to be. I'm kind of agnostic about all of that. Like I'm agnostic as to what the ultimate reality of UFOs are. If it turns out none of them are out of this world, I'll be fine with that too. I think there's a lot of very interesting ways to look at this topic that doesn't need to be about belief or having a belief system about what the UFO is or isn't. It's and too many people get caught in that kind of trap where they get their favorite kind of idea and it makes them angry at people that don't believe it. They don't want to listen to anything else. Like I think
and, I'm always interested in, like, listen, if somebody is completely and totally on the other side of the fence from me, it doesn't preclude me from having a conversation and trying to understand their point of view. But it does seem like on that side, they really don't want to talk to anybody that's skeptical, because they have this delusion bubble or something that they're focused in, and it's like only hanging out with people of a certain, I don't know, ethnicity or religion, or I think it's very limiting.
They create their little echo chambers, their own little filter bubbles, like of reality, where they only want to hear people that agree with them. And I mean, can you imagine how many followers I would have if I was, one of these true believers that I was all into the alien narrative like them? But
because you could just be regurgitating historical cases every day to gin up interest,
and I could get a ton of followers, but that gets ignored because I try to approach this topic more skeptically, and I think that's the only way to approach it. I think that's important that you approach the topic that way. If you want, to come up with some real answers, if you want to, approach this topic seriously. Skepticism gets just this really bad name, particularly like on UFO Twitter. Like they act like it's an insult to be called a skeptic. Like, what? It's not an insult. Like it really isn't. Like you should be skeptical. Like that's basically how science works, is, trying to come up with answers and explanations. I think when looking at verifying any claim, it's important to, using like Occam's razor, or I prefer like the law of parsimony or the principle of parsimony, because, this other side tends to take words and like twist them around. Like, so now people misrepresent what Occam's razor is and try and give it a bad name and talk crap about it. People talk crap about skepticism. They talk crap about debunking. They try and like make all these things derogatory words, like without really understanding the process or what's going on. And it's because I care about this topic that I think you need to be skeptical, not the opposite way around. And it gets a bit tiring. People always saying, "Oh, you just must be scared of the truth. Like your whole world will shatter."
Yeah, you and I have experienced a lot of those same things. And
like, you don't know me. That's not at all what I think. Like, it's quite the opposite. In fact, like it's because I'm dedicated and care about this topic. I wouldn't have spent all the time and ridiculous amounts of money over the years investigating this topic if I thought it was just total nonsense. Like,
you literally quit your job or livelihood to just do this. So that to me is a strange form of dedication that I
mean,
gotta
short of
admire and
people like
respect. Yeah.
short of people like Bigelow and, you know, maybe Fugel, like, I've honestly probably spent more money on this topic than most people. Like, I mean, it's very, very high six figures that I've spent just in the last 10 years on this topic. Like, and I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have put myself in the financial crap hole I'm in right now, you know, doing that if I wasn't truly interested in the topic and I wanted it to be taken seriously. And it's a shame that the people that do take it seriously, it's a very small community. I pointed it out before that a lot of people don't really understand, like, UFO Twitter is almost like this separate, like, sub community of like the entire UFO community.
Yeah, there's tons of people into UFOs that aren't on there at all. We have to
Yeah.
remember that.
And I just got on last summer, you know, and most of the people I respect in this field aren't even on Facebook, or they're barely on Facebook. They're not using Twitter. You know, I go and talk to like the history group guys. They don't know who any of these people UFO Twitter are talking about are, you know?
They don't know who King Milkfart is?
No. They don't even know who Jay Stratton is. Like, they don't care. Like, a lot of them, like, it's just like they're not impressed with all this post 2017 stuff, and they're not interested in like this whole UFO celebrity culture that exists online, where everybody has a podcast now and everyone's building these huge followings and making money on this topic. And that doesn't even enter their worldview. Like, they don't even hear about that stuff. Like I said, a lot of the best researchers are the people you don't hear about unless you're really into this topic. Like, UFO Twitter is not ufology. Just like I've said before, I don't think the whole Stephen Greer side of ufology is ufology. Like, he's his own separate community as well.
No, that's a cult right there.
Yeah. Like, there's all these people that, like, there isn't just like one community. Ufology isn't really a community. UFO Twitter is not a community. Like, it's a bunch of like cliques and niche groups that each like have their own little echo chambers and ideas, where they all just hate each other, and it's so divisive and ridiculous. I don't even get along with, I don't even agree with a lot of what like people that I respect and think are some of the best researchers think, you know, and that's perfectly fine. We don't have to think the same things, like, but we get along because we have a mutual respect with each other and we can act civil in our discussions. That's why I some of the best conversations I have are these days are with just a small group of people outside of Twitter. And
I gotta start doing that because
we don't agree on much at all. But
it gets very toxic, and then you know this nonsensical some approaches of people attacking each other for why? Because I busted your bubble. Like, we can't. I'm okay with agreeing to disagree. There are some like sort of and I get a lot of emails and correspond with a lot of people, and sometimes they're just on the true believer side, and I have to recognize that and accept it and just say, hey, you know, I'm you know, people will argue with me or say, you know, well, I've been abducted by aliens since I was a child, so you don't understand my perspective. Okay, well, we'll agree to disagree, though. Like, we can't. I'm not going to, you know, dox you and scream at you or put you on blast every day on Twitter for 3 weeks. It's really childish, some of that stuff. I wish it was better.
That's the thing. People, like, I'll point out, you know, like a silly story like Lazar. People will accuse me of attacking Lazar personally, slandering him, or I'll point out the bad behavior of something that's going on in the community, these bad actors, and people will act like I'm being negative. But one thing I don't do is I'm never actually making posts to personally insult an individual. I'll call out a silly story. I'll call out bad behavior. You know, people that are acting.
I'm probably guilty of that. I have said some nasty stuff. Probably I'm trying to get better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or say it with a smile sarcastically and not really be personally attacking. I mean, you know, we all have our moments where, you know, like I think I posted something about that Sean Cahill video, like, here, stupid, you know, here more fake UFO videos in Lou Elizondo's backyard for the stupid people. And
Yeah.
I don't really mean to be personally insulting, but I think like I get upset at these people who are just blindly following this narrative they're being spoon-fed. And now we've got people like Stephen Bassett saying that disclosure's coming in the next few months.
That guy's been saying that for like
my whole life. As soon as
pretty much.
What's the great part, Mr. Knox? I interviewed him, and I got to tell you, he's a great talker. He really is a convincing speaker, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interviewing him, and it's way early on. This is years ago, probably like 2016 or 2015 even. And I'm interviewing him, and it's like music to my ears, everything that he's saying. He's saying that the veils of secrecy are being lifted, and slowly the government is opening up, and we've got a lot of people working behind the scenes for disclosure. Like, he was so good and convincing and such a great speaker that I was like enthralled through the whole interview. But then at the end of the interview, he gives this big pitch about how he needs like $30,000 so that he could go lobby Washington, and here's my PayPal, and everybody's got to give me money. And I was just like, nope, and that's one of those things. And it made me go, wait, so you want people to pay your bills for like how long? So you get a free apartment in Washington? What senators are you going to talk to? What are you actually going to affect with this $30,000? But it was this huge money pitch at the end of the interview, you know? And then I felt used and dirty. I felt like, oh man. And then I felt like, do I say something? Like, I edited in me saying something after the interview because I didn't want my audience. I felt like he was grifting the audience he didn't know, but my audience was like this big back then. I was like, but I didn't want people to feel, I didn't want to feel like I helped a grifter get free money,
You could do a whole montage of all the times that, Stephen Bassett has said that disclosures, just around the corner. I want to answer somebody in the chat real quick. This book series, that's the Oxford very short introduction series, just short little introductions to topics like superstition, a very short introduction.
Oh, that's cool.
Stuart Weiss. Stuart Weiss has another great book I have over there called Believing in Magic that,
I like that. And I like quick reads,
Yeah.
So you're not going to be there for 10 days trying to read that book. It's a quick one.
Yeah. Those are mostly about like philosophy and like astrobiology, philosophy of science, myth, stuff like that. I like them because you can read them, in like a day. They're usually only like 100 to 200 pages and get a basic brief overview of the topic. Going back to disclosure anyway, Isaac Coy did a thread, I believe, on Above Top Secret, basically of just all these times in the last like 75 years, people said disclosure's just around the corner, just around the corner.
It always is.
People wonder why people on the topic like me that have been around a bit longer are kind of really hesitant about this idea of disclosure. It's because that same story has been being told since the beginning of modern ufology, and nothing ever comes out of it. Like nothing. I would be happy if this time is any different, but I don't think disclosure is even a real concept. Like disclosure to people kind of assumes the government has something to disclose in the first place. And for many people, that's like they've got the aliens and the crash saucers and they're waiting for the government to come out and tell you this. Well, what if they don't have that? What are they going to tell you? And a lot of people conflate this idea of transparency. I think the government should be more transparent. They should share some of this sensor data and other stuff for cases with us. They absolutely should be more transparent. But that's not disclosure that people are talking about. When people think of disclosure, they think the government actually knows something. And to be honest, I'm not convinced the government knows anything more than any of the rest of us do.
I agree with you. They might be just as clueless as the rest of us, right?
Yeah. And, it's not even just like me saying this. Like, even like Jacques Vallée says this. Like, he says he thinks the idea of disclosure is kind of silly, and it presumes this idea that there's anything to disclose in the first place. Like, it's more of like a hopeful belief system that, despite how many times it fails to happen, if you read like the book by Leon Festinger, like When Prophecy Fails, these people just, instead of, realizing it was nonsense, they double down on their beliefs and just like get even bigger into it. They push the date. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. and it's I'm not sure there's ever going to be anything called disclosure, and so
I
I'm
agree.
skeptical
We
of it.
have Chris Bartel with a kind and generous $10, and thanks for being a member. Says Bigelow spent money, but that doesn't make him an expert. Enjoy the channel, Stephen. True grit, no BS. Thanks for helping us to praise
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
See, I need to learn how to praise some more cash. I need to monetize.
And Zizek says, what about, I don't know if that's a question for you. I mean, I'll let you take that. What about time travel? I bet David Wilcock knows with a kind and generous $5. Praise the cash.
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
Time travel in the
Zizek?
sense that, like, what, maybe that UFOs are, you know, maybe us from the future or something of that nature.
Yeah, clarify if that's a question for us, Zizek. I think he's just making fun of David Wilcock, though. You know,
Yeah.
we're supposed to have a hover car from David Wilcock right now. Months ago, he was supposed to have a working hover car prototype with a free energy engine done. Speaking of grifters, and so far, all he's got is 3D printed models that look like G.I. Joe toys.
Yep. And
So,
you know,
big letdown.
there's been a few people that have addressed the idea of time travel, UFOs being time travelers. I think a guy named Mark Davenport did a book, I think, called Visitors from Time or something. And of course, more recently, you have Dr. Michael Masters did his book on it. He actually came to Oregon MUFON for a meeting I attended back when his book was first coming out. And I've actually got a bunch of swag from his book, Glow in the Dark, you know, cups to drink out of, and stickers.
Fun and prizes. That's a good thing. We gotta have fun and prizes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
I think that's just as, you know, every once in a while I have to try to stay open-minded. And one of the ways that I do is that's just as plausible of an explanation for like craft that defy physics or have extraordinary maneuverability or any of these other claims that people make as alien spacecraft. So I have to at least stay open to the possibility. But then if you really go down that rabbit hole, it gets wacky fast because there's people claiming the Greys are us in the future, and you know they screwed up their evolution, so they're coming back to get genetic material. It's a huge rabbit hole, that one.
You know, I actually watched the movie back in high school or middle school, I think it was, back when Sci-Fi Channel, you know, before they changed the name, when they used to have their Saturday movies or whatever. And one of these movies,
that stuff, the
whole plot was that basically the aliens and the Greys were and the UFO was coming back from the future to kind of help save humanity now. And the stuff kind of goes way back. And, you know, time travel, you know, it's an hypothesis, and you can be open to that idea. There's a lot of things that are probably just as valid explanations or potentially valid explanations. But the problem is, again, I think you need proof. Like, you can leave it open, like maybe that's it. But until there's some sort of actual evidence, you shouldn't go around claiming that's what's happening. Or really, I don't think you should really go holding into a belief on one hypothesis.
Well, so much of this stuff is speculation that they think they can fill. But when you fill an entire, I don't mind. You have to fill, if you only have so much available data, you have to fill in the blanks somewhat. But if you're writing whole books that is speculation or fairy tales, I'm really not interested. I don't think there's very, very much value in that, you know?
Yeah. And that's the, you know, a lot of UFO books these days, to be honest, like I don't read as many newer UFO books because they're all just either the same rehash stuff. They're not adding anything really new to the discussion, or they're just sensational stories. Like, honestly, some of the better UFO related books I've read in recent years are books that the UFO community didn't even like Sarah Scull's book, They Are Here, or whatever. Like, I thought that was a great book. Like, that was one of the better books I'd read in years. I tend to read more like academic related literature these days. And
I think you're better off, probably. Yeah.
Papers and stuff. I mean, I'm interested in even the stories because, you know, that's one of the ways you can look at this topic, by studying it from kind of like this mythological or folklore, you know, aspect to studying the stories. And I think that's perfectly valid. One of my favorite people on this topic is Eddie Ballard, Thomas Ballard, who, you know, did the study that I helped get released, his big, massive 2-volume Measure of a Mystery about the abduction phenomenon. That was kind of his dissertation. that I just released through Isaac Coy a few months back. He did a big airship studies, big airship files that I put out. Eddie's a folklorist at Indiana University, and that's another fascinating way to look at this topic. And it's one of the ways that academics have looked at this topic. A lot of people claim that academics have never shown an interest in this topic, and well, they have. It depends.
It's from a different perspective, though.
Yeah,
right. And if you think about it, somebody who's an expert in folklore would be excellent to study this topic, because so much of this stuff is like its own mythology and stories built on top of stories. I always love how a lot of the stories build on Roswell. If you think about it, we've got the Roswell rock, we've got the alien autopsy video, all of that was connected, Roswell slides. It was all connected to Roswell for a reason, and that's because the accepted mythology that people have already accepted, if you tie your story into that, people are more willing to give it a chance or believe it, or, it's like building on accepted mythology to create new mythology. So a folklorist, to me, is the perfect person to tackle it from that angle.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, if you actually study the history of this topic, is that you can actually start to see the evolving, mythology, the UFO mythos, and how it's kind of just been built up like over time. If people are interested specifically in the mythology of Roswell, there's a really good book. Forget the first couple words, but it's the Genesis of a Myth. I think it's by a guy named Ziegler, and it talks about all the different, Roswell narratives over time, like how they changed, how things were built and added to it over time. And you see this in all sorts of, UFO stories and narratives. A lot of this stuff goes back a long time. It even goes back before modern ufology. There's the whole occult aspect of ufology. Those guys,
Jack Parsons and stuff, right?
Yeah, either ships with people like Meade Lane, like Riley Crabb, the Borderline Science Research Institute, all these medium-like people like Mark Probert, way back in the day before, even 1947. The same thing holds true with a lot of, the pseudo-archaeological stuff that I'm also interested in, like ancient alien stuff, Graham Hancock nonsense. Like a lot of that stuff is not
Hancock nonsense.
Not new ideas.
I have to say, Grant Hancock was right about some things, though. But I think he gets a little out there sometimes. But it's worth watching or listening or reading some of his theories, at least, though, I think. But yeah, that stuff is interesting to me.
But all of it is not original or new. It goes back.
No, it's ancient mysteries that people have been talking about forever, right?
Yeah. And like, if people want to know about kind of some of the more 19th century and original kind of sources for a lot of that kind of narrative, there's a great guy, John Hupps. Graham Hancock has called him the basic kind of his worst enemy, and kind of debunking his claims and whatnot. He just did a podcast 2 weeks ago in Bay Area Skeptics. That's kind of all about the old 19th century occult literature and places that these modern narratives were built on. And the same thing is true for ufology, because a lot of UFO topics really merges with, like, you talked about Erica this on that podcast, with these new age concepts. Like, it's all just got merged together, like new age ufology.
It all goes back to Madame Blavatsky.
And it's all old. Yeah. It's all old stuff that just keeps getting rehashed or changed a little bit for a modern audience, and none of it's actually new.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And thank you, Zizix, for the kind of generous $5. And also thank you for being a member and helping us to praise
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
There you go. Yeah. And you know what? I also wanted to ask you about some of the latest, I guess we could call it hype and posturing. There's an awful lot of people talking about, oh, well, there's people in Congress that are being briefed, and alien crash retrievals and recovered flying saucers and bodies. And again, these are old stories that I think have been recycled since at least the 80s, and Len Stringfield's books, which were great books, but largely anonymous sources. He wouldn't name his sources, so nobody could check. But now there seems to be this narrative being pushed that, first of all, that there is alien crash retrievals of alien spacecraft, and we may have bodies, and we have recovered craft, and that people are being briefed about it in Congress, but it all seems very convenient to me that none of these claims that people are making can actually be verified. In other words, they're not saying, well, this senator and this senator and this senator had a briefing last week from this person, and this person who are whistleblowers and came forward about the alien crash retrievals. It's all very vague and very trust me, dude.
Trust me, bro stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I wonder what you think about these narratives that are being pushed by some of these people, who all of which have a profit motive. Ross Coulthardt's pushing this. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp are pushing this. We have this Liberation Times shit rag I would not wipe my ass with. It's not a journalist.
it's not journalism.
It's not journalism. But this is the narrative.
PR for Corbell and the Disclosure crowd. Like, that's all.
This is the narrative being pushed, though. So I wondered what you think. Are we really going to see something like that, or is this just more disclosure porn for the true believers?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so I'll start off by saying I would love if that was true. Like,
me too. I would make the world so much more awesome.
Who doesn't want that? But again, I don't think it's actually based on anything. Like, I think there's a lot of people now that are powerful people, like, you know, like Chris Mellon, and people that had careers, like even like Lou Elizondo, that have heard their own stories, probably from the UFO literature itself, and people conflating that with actually being like that they have evidence that there actually are saucers and crashes. You know, I'll point out that Canadian guy that was Minister of Defense. What was his name? Paul. God, what was the guy's name? Anyways, when he came out saying, you know, like Roswell is real, there's crash saucers, all that stuff, and Vice did an article, like one of the most, you know, powerful defense people, like in all of Canada, has said that this stuff's true. But you dig down to where he got those ideas from, it's because his grandson gave him a copy of Phil Corso's book, and the guy went on a UFO binge.
I absolutely agree with you on that. And and then also he really did have this mistaken belief that if it was in a book, it was true. So then after that book, every book he read about UFOs or aliens, he just took as 100% gospel. This was all true. And that's really a problematic place to be. And I get that he was, had a position of authority, but that doesn't mean that he was right. And his whole approach seemed to be like he just jumped right in and believed everything he read if it was in a book. And that's a problem.
That's what's going on now with a lot of these people, is that you've got all these people that are in positions of authority or have some sway with, like, say, people in Congress, and the stories they're telling are just that, stories that probably came from the UFO community and the UFO mythos itself. Like, I've seen no evidence that there's anybody has proof that these programs exist, that we're going to see crashes, or that there's aliens, or that they're telling Congress about this. It's all, again, anonymous stories. And there is proof. There is, in history, that Congress can look into all sorts of crazy things just based on belief systems. They had the CIA look for Noah's Ark because a bunch of evangelical Christians, thought Noah's Ark was on a mountain somewhere. Like, people's beliefs absolutely can motivate Congress to do various things and to say various things. And people conflate, I think, a lot of the personal beliefs that a lot of these people have with there being actual evidence for those beliefs. And I would be happy to be wrong about that, but I don't think they're basing any of that on actual evidence. It's just more stories that people are telling third.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, what are they going to say 2 years from now when people remember that they claimed all that, and we get nothing?
They'll just move past it like they do on everything else.
Yeah, and come up with new fake stories and hope that you forgot the other one. I mean, I think you can explain this. I know, having spent a lot of money, like, just on books and research materials and traveling to interview people, but did you want to explain? You said over 100K. You mean over like a long period of time, though, right?
Well, I would point out that a lot of the expense, like you said, is travel. It costs a lot of money to travel around.
Yeah, you traveled around for 2 years investigating Bob Lazar alone.
I was on the road, just tens and tens of thousands of miles of driving. Staying in a hotel, like that adds up. There's a lot of that. but I also buy a lot of material. Like I obsessively buy material and books and old stuff. Like, I mean, I've got so much UFO stuff. Like
I see what you post, and I know that you've got to have a huge library
I can't
because
even keep it all at the house. Like I've got a storage unit just like full of like old stuff, like
oh no,
magazines,
you're another
like
Michael Schratt. Did you know Michael
collected
Schratt?
magazines from like the 60s and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
Michael
Michael Scott,
Schratt's
yeah.
like that. He's got 3 warehouses. I know from alien scientist and Solar Marshall went to visit him, and he took them to one or more of them. He's just got like these huge warehouses full of every kind of UFO material,
Yeah.
old reports from organizations that no longer exist. He collects all of it. He's
And
got a
some stuff can
mountain
be
of it.
expensive. It can be expensive collecting like original material from 50, 60 years ago,
Oh,
like getting
sure,
original
yeah.
copies and stuff. Like it can add up. Like sometimes I'll post pictures of books in my collection on Twitter, and people are like, well, where'd you get that? They want like $600 for that on Amazon. Like, I'm like, really? Like, well, I mean, some stuff is, for example, you know who Ray Sanford is?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So uh, he has his book, The Socorro Saucer, at the Pentagon Pantry. So they were at UFO Congress a couple years ago. I bought out his entire collection of those autographed books for a few $1,000s. Like I'll spend money. I've spent ridiculous money on ridiculous things like over the years. You don't have to spend a lot of money to seriously research this topic. Fortunately, more and more stuff's getting put online. And that's actually one of the things I'm most passionate about is the digitizing and archiving the material so that it can be shared. And that's something I got, really into, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I think Erica Lukes is into that too, right? Like she runs around and tries to collect it when somebody dies, their material or their research archives, which is great to preserve it for future research and future generations. I think that's a good effort.
Because not everybody, has the resources or the time to travel around to various archives or even the opportunity. Like there's a lot of archives that unless you're a serious researcher, like you might not even get into because archivists are very careful about preserving the material. They don't want people's grubby hands getting all over it, messing with it, things going missing. And fortunately, through the people I've met, I've been able to do things like spend time like at Mike Sword's house scanning some of his
Yeah,
stuff.
and that's a good resource to have. Like occasionally people will ask me like, oh, can I borrow some of your books? And I just don't do it anymore because I rarely will get them back or I got to beg for them back or like, no, like here.
This is why I buy multiple copies of books all the time. Like I might have 2 or 3 copies of an old book already. And if I see someone selling it at like you go to like a
used bookstore, yeah.
Or even just like a local MUFON meeting, a lot of times like somebody will die and their family member has no interest in UFOs. And so they'll try and get rid of all these books. And so you can pick up stuff on deals. And I'll end up giving those books out to people like, friends or people that are interested in the topic just because
I gave away most of my books when I moved 3 years ago. I had to move two kids worth of toys. That was 10 van loads. Like I just did not have. I gave away so much stuff before I moved. Now I wish I had some of it back because I just so happened to move into a house with huge bookshelves along the whole basement. And then I went, oh.
So that's what I need. My place kind of looks like a mad professor's office from an old movie. Like I've got like stacks of like papers like 4 feet tall, like around here.
Like Knapp's back office. Did you ever see him in podcasts? It looks like his wife only gives him like one room in the house for all his junk, and it's all piled up behind him, like as high as the sky.
Well, have you ever seen Stanton Friedman? Back.
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah, yeah.
And I understand his files are just a complete disaster. Things like everywhere. I was joking with the old vet, Shane, recently about how none of us UFO guys tend to be all that organized per se. Like,
absolutely,
the
yeah.
best, and we can't all be, say Isaac Coy. That guy's like an organized machine with a work ethic I only wish I had. But yeah, a lot of this stuff is just a mess. But so much more and more is coming online that you don't need to be able to travel to places to like really dig into this topic. And it's important to preserve that stuff. And so that's kind of what my passion is preserving the historical record and making sure this material still exists, because it's tragic when you hear old researchers dying and their collections just getting tossed or thrown away, or it's like, that's just absolutely tragic. Like,
yeah.
so that's why it's good that, people like Erica and others have started collect people's collections. The problem here in the US is that we've never before had something like the AFU archives in Sweden, which is a
I
phenomenal
just saw
resource.
I saw like a Twitter post on that place and I went, oh my God, I gotta go there someday.
Yeah, they just had their 50th anniversary a couple days ago. And
That looks like quite a fun collection to be able to be able
probably
to
the
go in
best
there and just
archive in the world, like bar none. Like, they've got more stuff than probably anyone. And
except Michael Schratt. So
I would love to go there myself. Now there's some, like, David Marler's got his new National UFO Archive Center, which is starting to take some of the stuff here in the US, which is good because sadly, a lot of UFO researchers in America were sending this stuff over to Sweden, which means it would never be seen by any of us here again unless we went over to Sweden and looked to it. We needed a place here in the US, and I'm hoping David Marler's place can do that. The problem has just always been money. Like, there's not money in
you're gonna need a big warehouse. You're gonna need a big warehouse to store it all and organize it all.
You need space. You need a guy.
You need an archivist. Yeah.
And that's kind of that's honestly, that's like my dream job. Like, I would totally love being the archivist or the, people say I've got like an encyclopedic knowledge of this topic, and I know a lot, but I consider myself more like a bibliographer or like a research librarian. Like, I may not know the nitty-gritty details of every single case, but I can point you to where you can read more about it.
Sometimes that's enough. Yeah, oh no.
I know about
I'll be bugging you in the future if I can't find a certain source for something. It's good to know you. I could, get some places to check, right?
Somebody in the comments was just saying, do I know about the UFO archives in the Longview, Washington Library? I actually don't know about that. That's 15 minutes from where I live. So I would actually like to go check that out.
If it's,
I'd like to know more about that.
Especially if it's very, very close to you, right?
Yeah. There's money in this topic. Sadly, it's just not for the right things. It's for the people making silly documentaries and TV shows and promoting nonsense. It's always been the key limiting factor in UFO research, particularly historical research, is getting the money to be able to pay for places to store this stuff, digitizing it, archiving it. And so far, it's been down to, just handfuls of people, dedicated people spending their own time, money, and resources doing it. People like Barry Greenwood and like Jan Aldrich doing like the CUFO scanning project, going through and scanning the CUFOS files. People like Mike Swords that paid to have his files scanned, which I use for my post all the time. It's a great resource that I'm fortunate to have access to. And I try and share as much as what I can. There's a lot of stuff I have that for various privacy concerns I can't share, but I'm always trying to put documents out there. Something I recently put out about the whole hypothesis aspect of this topic. Like, what are these? Are these demons? Are these ETs? Is a book or a booklet, maybe I guess you call it, that Jerome Clark wrote for the Fund for UFO Research. That's all about the hypothesis about this topic. And I put that out on Twitter. I try and put out as much of these.
No, I know. I watch your Twitter feed, and especially when I'm getting discouraged, I like some of this older stuff that you post and the history posts every day. What happened in UFO history on each day? Mm-hmm. I was amazed to see there was a lot more of it than even I anticipated. Because when I first noticed you doing those daily posts, I went, does he do this every day? You do, right? Every day there was something that happened in UFO history.
I haven't yesterday since I started, and I started not only doing. And some days I don't even just do one anymore. Like, I'll do 4, 5, 6 different cases for a day a lot of the time.
Yeah, and we want to make sure we plug your Twitter. It's at Mr. Mr. Jeff Knox, KNOX. At Twitter, and I'll just share my screen so people can see samples. Some of the stuff. Just my name, Mr. It's Jeff Knox. And look, I don't follow many people, friends. You can look. I follow like 100 people or something, or maybe 150 now. I don't know. I don't follow many people because I don't like to fill up my feed with garbage. So every follow that I do, trust me, if I'm following them, it's worthy and good information. and also some humor as well. Please don't send us any more unsolicited nude pics with instructions on how to get to your house. It's creepy. Well, that's from Voyager, right?
Yeah.
And here's an example of some of the. Listen, this is the history that a lot of these people out here are missing. Just some of the times Congress was interested in UFOs, had hearings, etc. And this is before the major one in 1968. All those events were far more in depth than anything post 2017. Even various panels had more people and looked at more data than current efforts. And this was in reply. Somebody was saying that, oh, we've never this interest in UFOs in Congress, it's unprecedented.
Yeah, unprecedented. Never happened before.
and Mr. Knox is there to go, you are incorrect, sir. And here is the historical documents to prove that you are incorrect.
I still lost the argument or whatever. And you know, this document shows that Congress has even had hearings where they brought in Air Force witnesses to talk to them about what they saw before, like in 1961. Like, you know, people are like, well, now Congress is actually bringing in these people to tell their stories. Like, this has never happened. Like, but it has happened. Like, it's happened like multiple times.
Yeah,
like,
not only has it happened, here's the documents that only probably 4 people in the universe have to prove. Right? You know, that's why I like your posts, because I'm going like, ooh, damn, he got it. Look, it's from the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library. It's a news release, and it 100% supports his argument that all of this has happened before. It'll all happen again, and we still get nothing. Which is
and people are like, so they say like, well, when has Congress, you know, had the DoD study this topic, as if, you know, the military hasn't investigated this topic countless times before. And you look at the current effort, like Arrow has such a small budget. They've got like a single handful of people that work on the project. Like, that doesn't even compare to some of the smaller, just kind of ad hoc committees that have been happening in the past.
Here's some more great stuff that he posts. Engineering flying saucers. I love it when I see stories of people that try to build flying saucers in whatever form. I just am if I see somebody trying it, I gotta respect the effort, and I will read about every single person that's ever tried this, even the crackpots that never got anywhere with it, but got famous or a little bit internet famous from it, right?
And those were all Kurt Collins articles, because he does a really great job digging into like these forgotten stories of, you know, UFOs past, where times that the government's looked into UFOs, times companies have tried to create flying saucers, times, you know, even just individuals tried to create their own flying saucers. It's like, it's all very interesting, and it's stuff that a lot of people don't really like pay attention to.
And here's one of his Today in UFO history posts, so you can see, you know, look, there was a UFO case on this day in history, but in 1966.
This is the famous swamp gas.
The famous swamp gas case. That's where the swamp gas story comes from. Yeah. And J. Allen Hynek there. So I love the history of all this stuff. So I'm glad that you're out there posting this stuff. And here's the other thing I will say is that Mr. Knox, unlike most people, is not at all monetized. That means he's not out here trying to make money. He's just genuinely interested and you know, passionate about this subject, this topic, its history, and all of it. So give him a follow on Twitter at the very least. Let's get his followers up, because it's definitely a worthy follow to see. I should start stealing
probably 8 hours collecting. It may not seem like these posts take a lot of time, but a lot of it is just going through the documents.
No, they do take a lot of time, Mr. Knox, because you are
images, right?
No, so Mr. Knox is meticulous in his posts. He's not just throwing garbage. Everything is sourced. There's like
I always
historical information
everywhere I got it.
Yes. Yeah, he's an excellent follow on Twitter, and if that's all he's out there doing is posting excellent stuff on Twitter, it's a resource for all of us that we should all appreciate. Give him a follow. It's Mr. Jeff Knox, MrJeffKnox at MrJeffKnox. We want to spell it out for the benefit of our audio podcast listeners. Go over there and follow him. And people know I don't follow a lot of people, so if I recommend it, it's really worthy of it. And I want to thank you for doing this tonight. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yeah, we were gonna do one on Bob Lazar that we never got around to.
Well, I want to tell you that I have decided, Mr. Knox, that I am tired of arguing with people or sending them 10 videos that I did. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be working on a new project where I'm going to put everything in one video, and I'm going to make it as rapid fire, quick for these shortest attention span people as possible. Every data point I've collected, I've got to talk to Victor Caliero. I'm going to talk to Signals Intelligence. We've got alien scientists probably in on that project, and Solar Marshall, Dan, who is just another encyclopedia of knowledge, specifically about Bob Lazar. He's been totally obsessed with Bob Lazar, as have I guess you could say that about alien scientists too. But they're just like you and me. They grew up.
Dan Begkart and Mike Schratt did a lot of work on Lazar.
Yeah,
kind of back when I was doing it as well. In fact,
yeah. Well, I'm hoping to get us all together and all do one compiled, concise video with every data point about Bob Lazar that was sort of left out of the narrative on purpose. And you know why they left those points out. And then I just want it for my own sanity. So in the future, if anybody argues with me about Bob Lazar, I'm going to go, here's a link, watch that and get back to me. Let me know what you think. And then I'm done. I don't have to go, here's one about his education. Here's a link about the lie detector tests. Because I've done some of this, but in all small bits, or in a 2-hour long rant show that people don't want to sit through 8 hours of 4 of those.
Yeah.
So I got to collect it all up, but we're going to do it and produce it as best as we can. And I'm going to call it Bob Lazar, the rest of the story.
Yeah. And
I would really appreciate your input, because you have stuff that these other guys didn't find, or I want everything we can possibly put in there, and I'd really appreciate your help and input on that. And it would be awesome. And then we can all.
You probably won't, change a lot of people's minds, but that's kind of the thing. Like I do my posts, I put a lot of time into it. Hardly anyone actually reads my posts, but I figure if I just reach 1 or 2 people, then I've done my job. You're never going to convince everyone. Like a lot of people aren't even interested in changing their mind.
No, but wouldn't it be great for all of us
out there and hopefully some people
and wouldn't it be great for all of us to just have that one video on YouTube or wherever that we can all say when somebody argues with us, like, if you're still convinced after watching this video, I can't help you. Good luck. Here's the link. And then you're done.
I point them to Tom Mahood's website, because that guy debunked Lazar in the 90s. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I'm going to talk to him as well, try to get an interview, but I'm trying to. I'm going to try to keep this thing to like an hour or 90 minutes at max, but everybody come in and just rapid fire, like, here's what we got. And, because everybody's attention span, but I figure if Corbell's video was 90 minutes, ours should be too, because I could fill hours and hours and hours. It just depends on how it's done, but I want to make it as quick and concise as we can so that people will watch it. And you're right. I don't really care if I'm not trying to change everybody's mind, but I just want the other half of the story that was purposefully left out to sell the story. The other half should be available for people to see. And I don't care if I make money. I'm probably going to just put on YouTube the whole video. But
none of that matters. All that matters is he worked on alien spaceships.
Yeah, I don't really care about the money from that project. If anybody wants to split the YouTube ad pennies, I'll agree to that. Here, you get 27 cents. Congratulations. Thanks for your help,
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and we're going to listen, I want you to come back. Maybe we will do a show just on Bob Lazar, and I can just save portions of it for the bigger project or whatever. I'd love to hear what you did in total on Bob Lazar. I would love to hear it, and so would our audience here.
Yeah. And as far as Lazar, like, people really should follow Signals Intelligence. Like, he's actually getting guys on the record. Like, when I did my research, like,
I had trouble getting on the record. Yeah.
People didn't want to go on the record, and so, like, I could never really put out any of that stuff. And he's actually got people to go on the record. Some people that I even talked to, and people that I didn't.
Me too.
He's
I talked to a couple of people that he talked to who were like, "Oh no, you're not putting this out on the internet, are you? I don't want to." And I'm like, "All right, well then tell me off the record answer a few questions off the record. I promise you I won't. And yeah, but somehow he got them. Maybe they changed their mind after enough people contacted them. Maybe they said there is enough interest and I have this knowledge. I should share it. Who knows? I'm just glad he's out there. I'm glad him. And,
he's doing the best work on Lazar these days. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to throw you on out of here. Back to we thank you for joining us. What a great conversation. Don't be a stranger there, Mr. Knox. Cool. All right. Good night. All right, friends. What a good conversation. See, that's what I would like to get back to. When we do interviews here, I would like to get back to just good conversations, right? And ones that we can all enjoy and just take you guys with me for these. We've had some strange technical problems tonight. Our Rumble live stream borked somehow. And there's a problem with the rest of the live stream because I was seeing almost no viewers here, but it looks like there's a problem with StreamYard and it's not aggregating all the views. I can look and see that it's just like any normal night. We had 20 something on Rumble and more over on Twitch and 115 or something or 120 on YouTube. So I don't know why it's not aggregating the numbers. I do have to remind you that we are a viewer-supported show, and it is through the kindness, generosity, and support of all you kind and generous benefactors that we are able to produce this content. And we want to thank all of you kind and generous Patreon supporters and channel members and Twitch subscribers and everyone who contributes to the show and makes it possible. We follow a sort of PBS model, which is that if we produce good content and people appreciate it, they will throw a couple bucks in our hat and help us. And so far, this has worked. I also want to remind you, I'm wearing a blank one tonight. I forgot to wear a shirt today. I'm a terrible salesperson, but there's links to merchandise for Truthseekers in the description of the video. And here's Ian. The show is not over. I always have to put that banner on. People think when they see the bumpers that we're done, but I still have a little bit of time to share with you for comments and questions from the live chat and catching up. And we will do that. One second. Let me put this banner up here. Just a reminder, the show is not over and we're going to be right back, but we do have to do some business. We try to keep the shows as commercial free as possible. We just have a quick bumper to remind you about how you can help the show if you choose to. But just a reminder, since I have been getting some snarky messages lately, that this content we produce is now and will always be free, but perhaps ad supported. So you may have to listen to an ad in the audio podcast or listen to an ad or skip an ad on YouTube. These things are just necessary, but our content is always free. If you choose to support us, we appreciate it, and you can choose to do that. But the content that we produce is now and will always be available free of purchase. But we thank all of you who have chosen to support us. Here's Ian, the man with the golden voice, to remind you how you can help.
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truthseekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Thanks for being here. This is Truthseekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like, and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truthseekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat room during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truthseekers. Truthseekers.
Okay, greetings and salutations, and we are back, and we want to thank Zizix for becoming a YouTube member. For those that don't know, if you become a YouTube member during live broadcast, then we give you a thank you and a shout out. That's the least we could do. Zizix has been a longtime show supporter, chat room participant. We're glad to have him, and even gladder to have him as a member now. You get all those extra goodies in our members only section, just some extra videos, extra content that we produce, and you get a member badge now, identifying you as a supporter of the show and priority reply and more. So we thank you, Zizix, and we thank all of our kind and generous benefactors for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you very much, Zizix. So we'll take some comments and questions from the live chat. Listen to that. New film for Stephen Cambion's A Dark Place coming up in 3 hours. You know you can't release that music yet, right? You can release one song or something, but not the whole album. Did you do something for the whole album? I'll talk to you off air. And for those that have asked, I'm still waiting on some time to do or figure out the artwork for the audio album that will be available relatively soon. I'm going to stop saying when it will be available, because a few weeks ago I said it will be available in 2 weeks, and we missed that mark. And this is the nature of the beast, being a creative person. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You can't just release the album on YouTube. You can't do that. Did you not know? Or check with me first? Spooky thinks that's funny. Yeah, there goes my iTunes sales, right? Yeah. And by the way, I do have one you can do that with, Mr. Ian. I do have 3 other albums you can do that with and put it out whenever you want. Yeah, but not the latest album. That one's supposed to be iTunes only, or so the plan was before I let you have a copy, and now he's putting it out on YouTube, I think, or I hope not. I don't know. So questions or comments for me, please put them in all capital letters. Otherwise, it is date night with my wife, and you fellas in the chat know what that means. So I don't have a lot more time to share. I got to tell you that I had been talking to Mr. Knox privately. I'm glad that was our first real conversation, and I'm real big on that. Like, bring you guys along with me to talk to these other. Well, actually, it's 4 Paragon reason, because I have 3 that I'm going to put out for free. And then I'm going to say, if you like these 3 free albums, please buy the newest album on iTunes. At least that's the plan. And, like any grand plan, this sounded like a good idea. But then I realized that I did not have masters for each of the 3 that we're putting out. And I did not have artwork for, so now instead of artwork for 1 album, I need artwork for 4. But I'm speaking to a friend, and we're going to keep fighting the good fight, and we'll get the projects, the audio project done. Carl Christofferson says, "Hi, keep up the good work. I'm from Sweden, so see me as your friend, or if you need an agent, I'm at your service." Carl. Well, thank you, Carl. You could be our Swedish representative in Sweden. It's good to see you there. For Mambulax, I'll buy the white album. I might color code them. That might make it easier, right? Those first 3 anyway. And Marius is going to check it out. Operation Shutdown says, "Good show tonight, but we understand you need to end the show to get to date night." Yeah. And we haven't had one of those in a long time because we have 2 children who don't give us any free time together. So it's difficult. You got to schedule these things. Has anyone else seen Buckaroo Banzai and his adventures across the 8th dimension? I did, and I don't even know if I understand it. That I remember seeing that as a kid. It was on cable for like ever. And I like science fiction, so I probably watched that movie like a lot, but I still don't really quite understand it, right? That was a weird one. That was definitely a weird one. Yeah, and it was a flop, says Mario's Tico. Yeah, it was definitely a flop. He was a rock star, brain surgeon, time traveler. All right, well then that makes much more sense, right? JD says Ross Coulthorpe just announced the UFO control group is named Group K and expects someone in the Pentagon will have myocardial infarction after hearing that said publicly. Yeah, he says a lot of things, but Ross Coulthorpe is a disgraced journalist who got essentially laid off or fired, depending on who you ask, from 60 Minutes Australia for putting out a completely, totally hyped up fake story about pedophiles running the British government. And I don't trust anything that guy says. He's also been caught selling other 100% fake stories, right? Anything for a buck, apparently. Not really. No, not really. No. Yeah, and boy, there was something else. Somebody commented to me today. I once had another YouTube channel, and it was just Stephen Cambion YouTube channel. And I nuked that channel. Well, I didn't nuke it. I privated everything on that channel. And the reasons for doing that are, first of all, privacy. Some of those videos that I released a long time ago were sort of my own strange creative projects. And, through the lens of time, I don't really want them out in the public anymore. Some of them, I want to keep them for myself. And the other issue was that all of the Midnight Hour episodes, which was my first show, my audio podcast, which, by the way, started in 2015, those were available on my old YouTube channel, which is no longer really uploaded to or monetized. And so the Midnight Hour show episodes are all available here on our Truthseekers channel. I didn't want them on that other channel if they could be here earning ad revenue, even though not too many people are tuning into those anymore. But there are some incredible interviews with people like Stanton Friedman and many others. And so I just decided to nuke that channel. And if people want any of the Midnight Hour show episodes that were on that channel, they can come here for them. And if people want those old music projects or personal artistic projects, film projects, magic projects, special effects projects, laser projects, if anybody really wants any of those old videos, email me and I'll get you a copy or post a copy somewhere. But I'm not going to be maintaining that channel. But it's a good resource to have, because just recently somebody made some claims about when I started my show, because I mentioned on an interview that I started my show in 2015. Somebody disputed that, and I could go right to the channel and look up the first episode of the Midnight Hour. It was April of 2015 is when I started that show. And we want to thank Lady M for a kind and generous $9.99. Is that British pounds? I always get those confused. I think so. And thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support, and helping us to praise the cash, Lady M.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Very, very kind of you. Thank you for your generosity and support of the show. Operation Shutdown correctly pointing out he was a rock star, a brain surgeon, and a time traveler. Attention, Ismael Perez. Yeah, sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Right? Yeah. Lady M says it's so important. Go enjoy date night. I know I'm getting in trouble now because she knows that I said I would be 2 hours. We're at 2:27 right now, so I am going to bounce on out of here, Lady M. I gotta get my bang on, right? Yeah, no, it's important, especially if you're married with children. I think it's incredibly important. You gotta have date night. You gotta, and like we don't go out. We don't go. We stay at home and just watch some movies and spend some time together and try to catch up and connect. It's so important if you're married to do that, especially with children, because man, since children, it's all about them, right? As well it should be, I suppose, but we both spend most of our time, energy, and attention on the children, and it's good to reconnect just the two of us together. It's very good to do that and try to remain friends and work together within the family, and I'm sure I'm going to have some talk about goals for this spring or something, the house projects and cabin projects, and Thin Lizzie Borden. This is getting a little personal here. This is getting a little personal, Thin Lizzie Borden, but I will. Yes. If I should have said anything, oh my God, I hope she's not checking in if I'm still broadcasting and watching. You guys are all going to get me in trouble, right? Mr. Ian, that's gross, right? He wants Truthseekers brand shades with Truthseekers drawn on one arm and put on the damn glasses on the other arm. Oh, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool. All right. Well, we have done our due diligence tonight. We have brought a brand new guest on, and we haven't done that in quite some time. The brand new guests are always little. You never know what's going to happen. Sometimes I do a brand new guest and they have internet made by a potato, or, some kind of technical issues or weirdness is going on. So I'm feeling very relieved right now because, no major hassles. There is something weird going on right now with StreamYard. It's not telling me how many live viewers. And at first I was like, really? There's 7 people here? But that was a half hour into the interview. So I checked on YouTube. Everything was fine. Checked on Rumble. The Rumble live stream got borked, but don't worry. You Rumble folks, Rumble aggregates a video that once the live stream finishes it'll copy the YouTube video. And normally I delete that and leave the first one, but now I'll delete the first one and leave the second one. It'll be there shortly after we end our broadcast. Also, a final bit of business, someone correctly pointed out, you audio podcast people are on the ball, that I'm a few days behind. I will be uploading those later tonight, as well as a few extras, so we'll be all caught up again on the audio podcast, probably by 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. By 2 a.m. Eastern Time, or 3 a.m., sometime tonight, we'll be all updated, right? Make her your time boss and get off of YouTube. Yeah. And Spooky reminding everybody to hit the like button, please. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So my old YouTube channel is nuked, and it's my decision. If you want anybody here is only probably interested in those Midnight Hour show episodes. They're all here. Just go to the search bar on our main channel and put Midnight Hour. You'll see every one of those old episodes that I privated from my old channel. They're all here. I just think it's best if everything that I do is on one channel. But I may use that channel for something else. We'll see. So the audio podcast is getting updated. The tech issues are mostly resolved, we think, but now we've got new ones. See, gremlins get in, and you get some of the gremlins out, but then you get new gremlins. We'll work on it. We'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got several great shows left for the week for you. And hopefully I'll be catching up on some other things. So there'll be some extra bonus shows. Not sure when those will be. Maybe 2 a.m., maybe 2 p.m. Eastern Time, maybe 2 a.m. Eastern Time. But I did find a couple more of those Bob Lazar radio show episodes that I'd like to do a show on each of them. And we've got a show on AI taking over your life and all kinds of extra goodies for this week. So, but we've done our due diligence. That's all I've got for you, friends. We want to thank all of you kind and generous benefactors. We definitely want to thank our guest tonight, Mr. Jeff Knox. He really is a walking encyclopedia of UFO knowledge. And I, for one, am glad to know him. Please do follow him on Twitter. It's at MRJEFFKNOX. Oh, and we want to thank Sweet Caroline for a kind and generous $20 PayPal pledge. Nice little thing on the way out. Says, great show tonight. Like always, really enjoyed the video you shared last night too. Pardon me. Great perspective from a veteran who knows Elizondo is full of bullshit. All-knowing remote viewing Elizondo. Ha! Sweet Caroline, kind and generous $20 PayPal pledge. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. Longtime show supporter, Sweet Caroline. We're glad that you're back. We missed you. All right, friends, that's all I got for you. We'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.